So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our esteemed panel members and all the participants who have joined us today from across the globe. I am Ranjit Sinha, Director, MitKat Strategic Initiatives, and I welcome each and every one of you to this SecTech 2022 event, which is being co-hosted by MitKat and Everbridge. A very prominent quote on security technology goes like this. If you think technology can simply solve your security problems, then probably you do not understand your problems and do not understand technology. Right. The catchword being here is simply solve. Of course not. Nothing can be simply solved, right? However, the technology, if well thought out and applied at the right place at the appropriate time to solve a particular identified problem, will work always. And that's what we are here to discuss and listen about. We have some of the most prominent names in the field of security profession today who are here with us, and they will be discussing about technology that is being used in the field of security, how it is gaining prominence, how it is being used, and how it can help make our security more effective. The focus being on the evolving technologies, how it is being used, what can come in, and also how do we manage the brain and the heart. That is your command center. Today, we have multitudes of security technology, right? The traditional ones like your DFMDs, HHMDs, going on to integration, your AI, your drones, your counter drone systems, your AR, VR, etc. Right? Nothing is out of reach today of security. How we utilize it is going to be the most important and most effective. And that's what we are going to be listening about today. The agenda for today is a very well thought out and well spaced. We are going to have a couple of panel discussions. The first panel discussion being on the growing eminence of technology in security, which will be moderated by Pawan Desai. Then it will be followed by an address by Graham Osborne, who is the head of Global Business Development, Partner Solutions, and Technology Partnerships with Everbridge, and which will be co-hosted by Commander Sandeep Sinha, the Director of Risk Mitigation of MitKat, which will be followed by a demonstration of the AI-assisted risk tracker platform, which MitKat has. And then we'll have a panel discussion, the second one, which will be a very important one again, on the trends and technologies being used in the command center, which will be followed by the closing remarks by Robin from Everbridge. Now, without wasting any time, I will hand over to Pawan Desai, CEO and co-founder, MitKat Advisory, for moderating the first panel. Pawan is a naval veteran and a submariner. He has over 25 years of experience in physical and cyber security. He is one of the most vocal supporters for convergence of physical and cyber security, because that's what we all believe in. He's also an IVLP fellow from US State Department. So welcome, Pawan sir, and over to you for the panel.
Thank you very much, Ranjit. Welcome all the participants across the globe who are joined us today on this webinar, as well as who have joined us on LinkedIn Live. It's my immense pleasure and honor to moderate this panel. I was just mentioning a few minutes back that the combined years of experience of this panel is upward of 150 years. So it is. I think we'll make use of it. So I'll be speaking the least, and I'll be using the time of panelists as maximum. But as my duty, I'll just be introducing. Yes, most of the panelists do not need any introduction, but I'll just do my duty I'll start from Colonel Chandrawat. Colonel Chandrawat, I think, again, a very one of the most prolific security professional we have currently in the country. He's former Army Special Forces officer. He has intense experience of counter-terrorist and working in counter-terrorist environment in J&K, Northeast of India and Bhutan. He has commanded Elite 52 SAG, and he was also awarded Sena Medal and the Chief of Army Staff commendation. In the civil street, I think he has been more than a decade. He has worked with various industry. Currently, he heads he's the group head security, corporate security for Adani Group, is one of the most, I think, prolific group in the countries today. And sir, we'll be looking forward to hear your views on this thing. Second, we have Gopal Chaudhary. Again, we fondly call him as BPC. He's currently the group chief security officer of Vedanta Group since early 2022. Also, he's in group executive committee of Vedanta Group, and also he's in the governing body of Rashtriya Raksha University, the Institute of National Importance. I think he's a 360-degree man. So he has been in uniform, he has been in civil services, in corporate, I think, since almost more than a decade and a half now. Headed Wipro, Tata Steel. I can go on and on that, but I think yes, we all know about him. Then we have Captain Sanjay Sharma, again a veteran with almost, I'll say, rounding off to 3 decades. Yeah, it is 27 years, but I'll round off to 3 decades on that, which is of Army as well as corporate experience. He currently heads Wipro, global head of security for Wipro. He only manages a small 250,000 employees. That's a small people who work in Wipro, and all the facilities across the globe. He was earlier with Nestle, managing the South Asia domain. He also has been with GE Global Research and various other companies. Is, I think, one of the most I think the second most certified guy in this panel. He has CPSP, lead auditor, ISO 27001, certified security training assessors, and many more. Also, we have Sanveer Kheer. He is the director of risk management for Thomson Reuters. He has over 2 years of decades in enterprise risk management and GRC and third-party risk assessment, BCM, and many more. He only owns around 12 certification security. I'm not going to get into those certifications, but yes, again, a very well-rounded professional with a lot of experience in business continuity, cyber risk. And last but not the least, we have Kavita. She's a cybersecurity and risk professional, almost 2 decades of experience in BFSI, retail, healthcare, IT services. Again, worked with Wipro, Verizon, Bank of America, HCL, AstraZeneca, TCS, currently with TCS. Again, a lot of achievements at a very young age. She has been India's top IT influential security leader for 2022, Working Women Achievers Award for 2022. Congratulations, Kavita, on all these achievements. And yes, so this is the panel today. And I'll just set the context for next just 30 seconds to 60. So we are talking about, of course, the topic is a cliche that how the security is an influencer. I think it's not an influencer. It is the integral part in the way we are looking at the security. And how we are managing the entire enterprise, I'll say not physical security, but the entire enterprise risk management on that thing. With the world changing, and the world changing at such a rapid pace, and we are seeing thousands of jobs getting cut. Maybe the GDP things are thrown out of the window. Next 2-3 years looking really, really difficult in the sense that all the benchmarks or all the rates are going down in terms of projections and all that, and we are in a difficult state in next 2 to 3 years. the world is going to be in a much turmoil or much difficult state. In this kind of a state, when the organization, this is the question to Colonel Chandrawat, I think, when the organization is growing at a rate which you cannot even think of, on that, which is unprecedented on that thing, and how do you think the expectations are changing, and when you are moving from a traditional corporate to a very modern kind of an environment and a very fast and rapid rate, sir? So how are you embracing that kind of a rate of a change, and how does the technology is fitting into the entire scheme of things, and how the entire governance is happening, sir? I think maybe your initial thoughts on that, sir. Sir, you're on mute, sir. You're on mute. You're on mute, sir.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for giving the opportunity to speak. So if I ask somebody that you can keep your mobile phones and computers away for 48 hours and then function, probably you will be able to survive, but not function effectively. So today, technology is enmeshed into your life. So goes for security and in cyberspace. I've seen in the last 15 years, ever since I've been in corporate environment, that what technology was 5 years ago is today obsolete. The building I sit in was made in front of me. I designed this security of this building, and I thought these are the state-of-the-art systems I put there. Today, these systems are getting obsolete. Today, we are getting cameras, which is going to edge analytics on top of it. And then everything was talking to themselves in isolation. Now everything is integrated. And then it brings their own challenges of cybersecurity alongside. So it's getting more and more complex. And I'll just quote one example. The way that my company has grown in the last 3-4 years. So recently we acquired this Wholesome Cement, close to 31 sites, total sites 71, 8,500 employees, 10,000 outsourced employees. Their ecosystem is different than ours. And everything is, their processes are different, their technology is different. And now the corporate security, I am driving this initiative to getting them on board with our standards and our protocols, and making sure that those vulnerabilities may exist in that system may not come alongside. Therefore, the security today is intermeshed in your life. As I said, who would have thought, let's say 5 years ago, that tomorrow you can take attendance from cameras, or you can take attendance from facial recognition systems rather. So it's maturing. When I was a young officer, my CEO said, don't learn computers because the guy coming from across doesn't know computers. You better know how to fire a gun properly. So when I followed his advice, the time came when I was an absolute illiterate in computers, but I had learned quickly. And organized big in size and scale to $250 million company. There are added risks alongside which are invisible. So I work very closely with my cybersecurity department and IT to make sure that our systems are robust. Integration is seamless, and as new entities come on board, we take them on board in a more professional manner and do good work.
Great, sir. Thanks for your initial thoughts, sir. Let me move on to Gopal, sir. Sir, how do you see when you sit at the governing council of a large corporate? How do you see the expectations from the stakeholder changing? Because security was a very traditional kind of a thing. How do you see the role of a CSO or a CSO, and maybe integrated roles are changing? And what do you think is the new the expectations from the stakeholders?
Thanks, Pawan, for providing me this opportunity. I see a lot of familiar faces. Colonel Chandrawat, Sanbir. I have not met Mr. Sanjay Sharma, but at one point of time, I headed security Wipro. And for the first time, Wipro did this experiment where I was made the first CSO and CISO. So when I joined Wipro in 2009, I was given the responsibility of physical security, cyber security, and they had merged that role. And I think that, again, that got separated later on. Why did they do that? So if you see the entire scenario, as Colonel Chandrawat has just said, is changing rapidly. We had 9/11 World Trade Center. It was a business house. We had 26/11. It was again an iconic Taj and Oberoi in Mumbai. And this gave an opportunity to the terrorists and criminals that iconic business houses are also a very lucrative target to attract the attention of the whole world. So Kalchandrawat was part of NSG, and we all have seen that, Marcos, commandos, and all that, Mumbai police, finally NSG had to come. They all could not contain that crime. Because Mumbai police never had thought of fighting a war on terror on their land. Mumbai police was supposed to be one of the best forces in the country as far as organized crime management is concerned, but they were never trained for terrorist management. Similarly, if I see the way business houses are expanding across the geography, and the way technology is also improving every day. Now we are talking about data poisoning by cyber criminals, use of artificial intelligence by cyber criminals to evade the all protection that you put around your cyber system. So when criminals are using technology and they are much more networked than we all together, like we meet once in a month, once in a blue moon somewhere, we discuss something in 30-40 minutes, but they keep networking with each other and they keep getting the ideas from each other. So expectation of the organization has gone from, as I quite often say, guards, guns and gates, to business continuity, resilience, enabling, like Kalchandrawat had said, when you acquire a new company, like when Tata Steel acquired Bhushan Steel, Usha Martin, there were huge cultural changes in these two companies, bringing in those cultural changes, in, making them inclusive of your culture. And at the end of the day, it is competitive advantage that you provide. So how exactly do you provide the competitive advantage? By securing the assets and insulating the entire corporation from the risk. You need to figure out, can you have several stakeholders? And if you have one person who is managing physical security as well as cyber security, because both are intertwined and both are interconnected. So say, for example, if a cyber criminal hacks your system, he can completely switch off your CCTV system, access control system, pits, and he can create chaos. Now, corporates, when they deploy, convergence of physical security with IT, they reduce the manpower. Imagine yourself that you have removed all your manpower from your perimeter. You have kept a very lean team at the gate. You are dependent completely on entire system integration or entire integrated security system management, and all of a sudden somebody switches off the entire system. Your command center is hacked, your entire system is hacked, and then you do not know how to respond about it. So exactly where convergence of physical security and cyber security makes a sense is that you have one person who oversees both these functions well, and it's a lean team of cybersecurity that supports the entire enterprise, also physical security head, and you have one person who is accountable to the board, who becomes a single point of contact for the leadership team and also ensures compliances, because now you have several acts across the globe that makes the violation a responsibility and a accountability of the board. So we need to see as to how both these physical security and cyber security people work together. That is headed by one person, and it is able to not only insulate the enterprise from various risks, but also ensuring the compliances.
I think fair point, sir. I think what you have put the picture and what it was and what currently on a lighter side, I'll take away. One takeaway will be we have to have more drinks together so we can network more better, sir. In the future, yes, I'll take that as a takeaway. Right, moving on to Captain Sanjay. I think great point with Chandawat sir and Gopal sir both made. I think as a tech company in the tech domain where so many jobs are being cut, budgets freeze are happening, hiring freeze, everything happening. And security spend has to increase because the demands from internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, integration, convergence increasing. So how do you manage this kind of a thing and a business plan when you make and when you ask for more money from the stakeholders? How do you see you are able to manage the entire show on that thing? And what will you recommend to so many people who are listening to this on that?
Thank you. Very, very interesting question there. It's difficult. That's the first point I'll say, but not so difficult that a CSO cannot manage it. And I think you have to outline the value proposition properly to the decision makers in terms of value of that spend and how smart you can make a security by adoption of technology. We are a tech company. We believe a lot in adoption of technology for physical security deliverables. And there is a corporate sponsorship already there that you should embrace digital transformation and imbibe digital technology. And that's how we do it in terms of making security smarter by the day and delivering that value for achievement of business goals. So it's all about, we saw it in the pandemic also that a lot of companies were in a rush to adopt, technologies for contactless entry. And there are mature companies which are not in that challenge, because they could adopt that system quickly and integrate with their systems. So it's all about, what level of security you have and what is the maturity that you expect. And it's all about narration in the board. How do you narrate your statement to the leadership and to the board that will drive the investment? So you have to learn the language of finance to tell them the value, because there will not be a classical ROI, which can be qualified as a business case. So there'll be a lot of return of data, I would say, that you should qualify, and the value that this data brings, both for employee experience, customer deliverables, as well as for overall safety and security in the organization.
Great points. Thank you very much. Let me just move on to Sanbir. I think you have experience of various regions, various kinds of companies which you have been handling, and you have been one of the maybe front runner in moving into the BCM domain and a risk domain. I think almost for the last 10 years, I'm hearing you talking about more of a risk management than physical security, and you have been an early adopter in this sense. How do you see security when you see from the other side, from the enterprise risk management side of it, which is there? Is it something different? Is it something which maybe physical security professionals need to evolve into on the next level kind of a thing? And how do you see the entire integration in tech play a bigger role in that?
Thanks, Pawan, for having me. So a very interesting question, and probably I'll bundle up the answer under 3 U's. U as in the universe. So the first part is, when we look at from an inside out view, or what the internal stakeholders or clients are typically looking at when you talk about enterprise risk, is the first one is the unified risk management. Gone are the days when you can think about risk in isolation. We have heard Colonel Chandrawat, Gopal sir, and Sanjay sir talk about that in different ways, right? So if you look at your convergence, you cannot say that, okay, I'll only look at an ISO 27001 control. Well, ISO 27001 also has physical security controls, right? So you have to think holistically. The second piece, which I would say is think about uniform controls, consistency across businesses. We heard Colonel Chandrawat talk about acquisition, and whether it is a merger or an acquisition, the probability of your controls becoming either weaker or stronger exists on both sides. How do you make sure that your controls stay consistent? It is uniform, it is applicable, and bring in the regional nuances, right? Each region, each country's got their own potential nuances related to the type of risk that they see. The third, U that I would use over here is the universal applicability of policy standards and procedures. Now, if you look at it, we tend to say, okay, here's the policy, here's the standard, here's the procedure document, go ahead, follow it, right? That typically doesn't work. Saying that, okay, we've got a great technology, we've implemented a great technology, but what about the processes? So put processes before you put, the technology, and then look at, okay, whether this technology is right for you or not. Controls fails not because of the tech, it basically fails because of the people behind it, or people not being there, as Gopal sir kind of brought it up. So think holistic. The demand today is moving more and more away from saying, we've got a business resiliency issue, we've got a crisis coming up, we've got a physical security issue. Well, everybody says, what's the risk? Answer that risk question, and probably you'll solve for many more things in the bargain.
Great. I think couldn't have been put better, and really, really well articulated, Sanbir. I think let me move on to last but not the least, Kavita. You are seeing the risk from a totally other side of, I'll say more from a cyber side of it. And can we have your views on how do you see the entire thing moving, and what is the direction? Because there seems to be no end in how much you can protect, how much you can invest. I think as I think it was mentioned that the adversaries are integrating much faster than we are. It's a cliche, but yes, it is happening. But there is no end. Every hour new security product is coming up, and this is we are the panacea, and we will solve all your problems, and still we don't have solutions. We still get hacked, and that's a normal story. So how are you seeing the trend and this difficult times where the budget cuts and job cuts are happening on that?
Thank you, Pawan. Hi, everyone. Good morning. And thank you for providing me this opportunity, Pawan. And this is a good initiative. So where I got an opportunity to hear out, key insights from leaders in the industry. And, to talk about, where we are going and, security, definitely, it's not like it's found new, right? We all know, is it for 3 or 4 decades, we have seniors working in the security industry. But as the technologies continuing to grow and evolve, these threats that is evolving are sophisticated and complex in nature. If you just take us 2 phases before COVID and after COVID, before COVID, when security team always used to go to the, management, there is never a go ahead. They always used to keep a question, based on what can I invest on this domain because it's non ROI, right? Security is never considered as, we are preparing for the future and the incidents and not for the current. But that was not given so much importance until we faced this COVID. And even work from home was definitely an exception, especially in BFSI industry. We has to get a lot of approvals for taking it as an exception to work from home. There were a lot of legacy systems that we were following, which was not open until we had to be returning to a normalcy of work from home, right? So globally, we are all working from an open environment. And when we work from an open environment, it's an accepted truth. The vulnerabilities and threats are not an exception. They are accompanied with that. Today, the cyber security and the cyber risks that are evolving has increased, as we have started influencing and increase in using the electronic devices and moving to latest technologies like IoT and machine learning, cloud security. And cloud we definitely have to appreciate, because when there was a situation where we cannot work from our desk and it has to be function from wherever we are, cloud definitely helped us in improving the availability, scalability, and the kind of scale that we could work on. But as the industries are moving towards the technology, they're failing to see what are the security measures that they have taken and what is the control that needs to be in place when there is a significant change in the old legacy system. Due to which there was a significant increase in the type of ransomware attacks and cybersecurity incident that has really, it's nearly 200 to 300%. We can definitely not deny in stating that, because the ransomware attacks when we take were hit by the majority of the the product companies, I would say, by 43%. Can we believe that this is a statistics that is released by the one of the big fours, right? And average downtime, when we are going to face a ransomware attack, it has definitely minimum 21 days, and the kind of penalty that we have to pay is 300 to 400 million dollars, right? And what and according to the trends that is improving now, there is a state, and as per the survey, it's going to increase more than $1 trillion of investment in the security area. We are ready to invest. The organizations are getting ready in doing a root cause analysis for themselves to understand what is wrong today. What we saw in the past, where the organization was not having this security as a priority item, now it's become as a top 5. Including the US President Biden has kept, cybersecurity as the top 4 in his, most wanted list. That much of priority the security has gotten, and, the requirement and the demand is increasing. But as the demand increases, the resources that we have to, enable the system is going short. And as per the recent survey, it is proved that by 2025 there'll be shortage of resources, security resources. We would be struggling to build this culture unless and until we get more more organizations start not only like looking into the experience, but start training and molding the resources who are in there in across the industry. And we have to develop this training and awareness so that everyone is aware what is the need for this industry and how we have to protect not only ourselves, not only the project, but also the company, because each and everyone in the company owns the data, and that importance should be highlighted to the companies and to the employees. And for this we need more initiatives like this, where we are prone to educate the system and the resources around us. Thank you.
Great. I think excellent. And yes, so there is a lot of opportunities in that space. Yes, the shortage is always talked about, and it's difficult to find great guys on that thing. I was just yesterday I was with one of the European banks, CISO and CSO combined role for South Asia. Staggering figures. He said in 2010, mid 2000s, the cybersecurity budget of IT budget used to be 3.5% to 4%. Now it is 46% of the IT budget. So it is phenomenally more on that, and it is ever growing with the new law. Let me take this opportunity because we have.
Pawan, just to add on, just a small thing that I would like to add on, but as per the panelists, they rightly highlighted, how the industries are, or the company organization is understanding, where to invest and what to do. We always are aware about the risk assessment, risk management, where the companies do categorize them into high, medium, and low. What is low for me can be high for you, and what is high for you can be low for me. So that is always a debatable subject, and it has never been accepted. But now there is one developing area, cyber risk quantification, to quantify the risk and show the numbers in front of the organization for them to evaluate what will be the impact to our business on the numbers, rather than being on the categorization of high, medium, and low. So that's one area I would say is developing in the market. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for that input. As I said, let me come back to Colonel Chandravat, I think, and we'll use your presence because there are so many aspiring CSOs here, CISOs here on the almost we have 340 plus and almost equal along on LinkedIn, sir. So you've always been successful. I've been hearing this for last 20 years that management doesn't give us budgets. We don't have money for technology integrations. I have never heard from you that kind of thing. You has always managed. I think I really admire and really respect for that kind of a thing. What is your advice for young people which is there? Because the biggest impediment they are facing is how do you justify ROI on any investment which they are making? So where do they go wrong, or maybe what are the right things you have done which we all can learn from that and maybe implement? Sir.
Okay, so what I would say that Napoleon said one look is worth 1,000 reports. So if you're a professional and you reach the level of a DGM or a GM level, that is the time you should start having some vision. Where I'm going to head? Where is the technology heading in 5 years' time, 10 years' time? If you don't have that vision, and if you work in a kind of ad hoc manner that I'll fix this for today and then I'll again jumpstart again, it's not going to work.
Right.
It is, you must have a vision for your organization and for your your perception of security and safety. You need to have the management convinced about it. It's a hard task, but if you can sell this, that okay, today it's like in South Asia, the situation is so volatile that if security is not in place, you can't do the business. Simple as that. Now, they understand, and thankfully now I'm in a very comfortable zone where the money is not an issue anymore. Right? Sometimes people do ask questions, but not anymore. If I can, so take the case of where we have reached. Today we are now talking about data analytics on security.
Yes.
So all my systems, I have this tons and tons of terabytes of data, and they are working. I got 428 sites pan India and 22 abroad. All this data, when I put together and ask questions based on that data, I'll get some picture which will give me better efficiency, better governance, better crisis management, better cross-functional usage, better safety, and other advantages. So if you work in that fashion, so today it's very important to have a man behind your technology. If you may have the great technology, but the man is a dud. You have seen control rooms being manned by security guards. They are poor man's James Bond. What do you expect out of them? The state-of-the-art camera, he doesn't know what to do with it. So it's a holistic thing you do. So you have to have technology, you have to train people, have the right person at the job, have a vision, and keep asking questions all the time.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for those. I think definitely it'll be a great help and guidance to a lot of people who are listening to that. Again, a similar questions to, I think Gopal sir comes with equivalent experience. So we all talked about cybersecurity and physical security integration. And yes, you said in Wipro days, so it's almost a decade and a half it started. Still, I don't think so. Very many organizations have been able to integrate it, I'll say in spirit. It may be happening in bits and pieces, but I don't see other than few banks which have done. What do you see are the challenges in this going ahead, and what needs to change drastically if we want to really see an integrated security or in real sense an enterprise risk management function on that?
So before I tell you, Pawan,
Yes,
I must tell you what Kal Chandrawat has just said. I was also, when I joined Wipro, I wanted 100 crore rupees for convergence of physical security with IT, and everybody told me that I must be joking. And when I made that presentation, everybody said that it is not going to be accepted.
Correct.
But it got accepted. And it got accepted because Mr. Premji said that, can you convert this implementation into a business solution? And it got converted into a business solution. And while I was in Wipro sold this solution, SpiderNet, to 7 clients and had recovered the entire investment on technology.
Right.
Second aspect, like Kal Chandrawat had said about investment, I got 300 crore rupees in Tata Steel.
Right.
There were 2 reasons behind that. One was that Tata brand was attacked in 26/11, and Mr. Ratan Tata wanted all the national critical, sort of installation to have a state-of-the-art technology. So there was a pain point, the reason why I should have a technology.
Right.
But second point was the loss prevention and the amount of losses that we could prevent. Almost all 500 crore worth coal getting pilfered between port and plant, or entire supply chain had a losses of 100 crore rupees. That got, when we started showing the data, and we also started showing the data as to how technology and investment on security has protected the brand. And we could sell more than 250 crore rupees worth product, which we were unable to sell because of the counterfeiting. Money came pouring in. I never had a problem of money. Now I come to your question. Why did Wipro for the first time decided to have physical security and cyber security guy in one person? That was me. And later on they discontinued. What exactly is the reason? Because still physical security people are considered not well trained, not having the right abilities and qualifications to lead cybersecurity. And cybersecurity people do not intend to learn the nuances of physical security. So need of the hour is that instead of blaming the business leaders, we need to come out with people who are trained in such domains, so that business leaders also understand that the person who is managing the physical security is capable of, managing the entire cybersecurity field. How many organizations, like say, for example, Vedanta, we don't have one. Adani, we don't have. Reliance, we don't have. These are the big names in the Indian MNCs where you do not have these. Why exactly it's not happening? Reason is that even in Tata Steel, I used to have an interaction and I used to find a huge resistance from the CIO saying that, how can you manage cybersecurity? You are a physical security guy. And the type of people that you basically represent, his straight away focus goes on the security guard standing at the gate. Ye to unka chief hai. He is basically heading him. How can he understand the complexities of networking, cyber complexities, and all other? Wherein I definitely see the reason it should happen. I do not know whether it is a white collar mentality versus a blue collar mentality, because still physical security is considered a blue collar job in most of the part of this country. We need to bring professionalism, and that's where Rashtriya Raksha University, organization of MitKat and all other consultancy, and people who are running the Center of Excellence can groom people, make them capable to understand both. Like Kal Chandrawat has said, when I also joined the army, when we used to be detailed for computer courses, CEO used to say, if you have time, go, otherwise you can forget that. Don't worry about that. I understand that mind. I still know a lot of senior people who keep a typist in their office. I'm talking about a very senior people in the government who keep a, sort of a guy in front of him and he dictates and that person replies his mail.
Sure.
They have not learned that. So understand this, that white collar crime, white collar job mentality and the blue collar job mentality, a perception in the minds of the business houses. I'm the first guy who is part of the Vedanta executive committee. Correct. They have not made any security guy to be the part of the executive committee. Why are they doing it? They are seeing the importance. They are seeing the importance as to how it can add value to the overall investment they are making across the globe and how exactly that gets insulated. So it's still a long way to go in India. I don't see that happening in near future. A couple of organizations that did that, they have dismantled that. That is right example is Wipro itself, where I served there.
Great, I think great points. Yes, we have a long way to go. Just an anecdotal, I was a few months back, I was with the Tim McNulty. He's the global CSO for JP Morgan, the global. He is one of the only physical security head who is heading physical and cyber both. So I asked him the same question. So he says, Pawan, you don't need to know cybersecurity at this level. You need to ask the right questions and hire the right team. If you can do that, I think I don't think so. If there is any challenge, and you don't need to know networking. You need not be a CISSP. I think Chandra, you want to add something on that?
I want to just say that time has come. The favorite topic of Pawan is merging of cyber and physical. I've just finished last week a crash course on CISM. I scored 60% marks without studying at all. Right. And if I do CISSP, I put my head together, and I made my 20 other officers do the course. Next is the CISSP, I'm putting 30 people in that. Out of these 60 people, even if I can produce 3 or 4 who can then be both experts in both fields, they will take the journey forward. I have already started this, and it is inevitable. If you don't do that, I keep telling my guys that if you don't understand cybersecurity, you'll be out of job in 3 to 4 years' time. Absolutely. And that's where they understand that. So it will be done, not in probably Gopal's my time, but going forward, it will happen, and it is the only way to go.
So hopefully in mine's and Sanjay's time, or otherwise at least surely in Sanvi's time, it will happen. So on that thing, but yes, I think a great, sir. I think, and if you at this level, stature, and at the juncture in life can do and think of CISSP, I don't think so. People who are listening, and most of the people should have any choice, or they should not think that now we cannot do it, or I think great point, sir. Thanks a lot for that. Coming back to now, Sanjay, I think that we have seen the challenges, we have seen, and you maybe heading more of a global kind of a thing. How do you see the global nuances? Do you see security standards different in various countries? Do you see expectations from stakeholders which are different when you talk about Europe, when you talk about US, when you talk about South Asia? What are the differences? What do you see on that? Then how do we mitigate those kind of expectations from different regions?
So there are many differences in terms of regional nuances or in-country nuances as compared to India. The Indian team is most heavily reliant on the experience of the Indian side of operation. They try to implement that in other geographies in the world. So the legislation is different, the culture is different. The competence and capabilities of people are different, and your size of business and the distribution dictates what type of solution you will have. So, for example, in some of the geographies, people prefer a self-service option rather than a manpower serviced option, even for a activity like a visitor management. So you talk of a contactless visitor support system in India. There will be 1,000 people tell you why not to do it. Whereas if you go abroad and see, they say, why should we have an operator to do that? So there is a connotation that differs in context between geographies and the way the local culture has adopted themselves. So they are much more tech heavy on certain things. So even in the pandemic world, it was easy to transition solutions abroad than in India, because India is still struggling to educate the guards to have familiarization with the right technology. And whereas it was more self-service already in place outside. So those differences remain. And then, of course, the data regulations change. So UK, you have the Data Protection Act. So how do you deploy your CCTV systems in UK is governed under that act. And of course, the GDPR regulations. Now, India, of course, came out with the draft privacy legislation, which is very similar on penal action on the Indian context. But now I think the time has come that you structure up properly in terms of what type of tech you want to have, because there's a lot happening at a distance now. So there's a lot of focus on remote monitoring through command center, which is, I'm sure, the theme of one of
The
the
next
panels
thing,
today,
yes, that's true.
and what type of value the regional command centers or global command centers add up. The geopolitical environment is changing a lot, and that has its nuances on the regional side of security management. So your ability in terms of how you are able to assess the geopolitics and convert to business information and your advantage to remain relevant and still meet your protection objectives is the key here in terms of your ability to assess that information and transfer that information for business value. So that's very key. And it's important that, and slowly, I think organizations, especially big ones, they already realize this. And, the organizations are not as big. They will have to adopt these measures if they really want to be globally competitive. Otherwise, they'll be left way behind in the race.
Absolutely.
So there are a lot of solutions that are available, which can help you, implement that technology in terms of your remote monitoring aspects, in terms of legislation integration, in terms of your cultural, breaking the barrier on the culture side. Because when you talk of large companies, you want to have one company culture, is irrespective of the local culture, one employee experience. That's the buzzword that most of the CEOs and chairmen would use.
Yes.
So how do you deliver a consistency of experience and management of security across so many geographies is the true challenge before CSOs at a global level. And for that, they need management sponsorship and a lot of support from the ecosystem and the stakeholders. And rightly said by Gopal and Colonel Chandrawat that it is all about, how competent your structure is. So whether you have cyber capability in your team, people who are qualified on this type of formal education or certifications, information security requirements, or even physical. Most of us are drawn from the military ranks, so we understand physical security. We're grown in that. It's our bread and butter. But the adoption of InfoSec was first, and now, of course, cyber. Yeah. So there are many people who are into geopolitics, cyber, which should be integral part of security function, and that's what is changing.
Right. I think absolutely. Thanks for that. Moving to Sanjay, I think what Sanjay said also, that there are so many solutions which are available, and I'm sure every day 10 vendors must be coming to you and telling you that this is the problem. Everything will be solved. Just implement these solutions. How do you make sense out of the noise? Because this whole industry, I say both cyber as well as physical, is very vendor driven, or it is. We are implementing solutions and then figuring out how to use them, then doing a risk management process and implementing what we need. How do you make sense, and how at a global level of a company like yours and your earlier companies, how do you make sense of these things?
So I think let's begin with putting things in perspective, right? So I typically use the 5C approach. So when you look at the complexity of the environment, right? So to begin with the first one, what's the complexity of the environment? What's the clientele? Now, when we talk about the clientele, we're talking about internal and external stakeholders. How does it impact your your products, your services, the work that brings the money back home? The third aspect, which I typically look at, is the culture. Regional nuances, we heard about that earlier as well, right? So what's the regional nuances? What's the local regulation? How does it impact? Is the culture open enough to accept a visitor management system versus having a guard at the gate to run you in? The other two pieces, which probably are the bread and butter of MitKat and Everbridge, is the crisis management. So start with the alert, right up to managing the crisis. How do you get the alerts? How do you enable yourself to get the fine print of what's likely to happen much before it happens, and be able to make sense of that? And how do you communicate? The last but not the least, do you have enough communication mechanisms to reach out to all your assets? And when I say assets, it's not only the properties, but also the people, your employees, What about your third parties? What about your vendors? What about your outsourced people? How well do you integrate your environment to be able to reach out to them when it is the time? I think if you put that into perspective and you ask the question, globally, what can we do? Certain things will surface more than the others, and you can probably, cull out the cream from the milk.
Thanks. I think great. Right. I think moving on. I think we have 2-3 minutes more. So just tell Kavita to be very crisp on that. We all are seeing, or most of the panels here are seeing side from physical security or crisis management side. You see from the cyber side of it. So the way we are thinking, or the people from physical and thinking that it is very important to integrate on all this. Do you see the same chatter happening from the cyber side, or they say, okay, this is one of the smaller agendas, maybe 10-15% of the revenue of the budget. It's a very small baby. Let it jump the way it wants. So how are you seeing the integration?
So, thank you. And, it's very important, the question that you framed, the organization was seeing like that. It's just another function and the investment is not a big deal, something like that. But now when they understood the importance and the criticality of the current threat landscape, the thought process has changed. The cybersecurity, as I said, to reiterate, what was in the lowest position now has increased to the highest, agenda item in any call that you get into the senior management or the senior stakeholders. So the organizations are coming up to give importance to understand where is the right place to invest. But as we have to really understand, a lot of vendors are coming up in the market and everybody is coming up with new tools and evolving. The technology is uncertain, right? And the organizations are struggling to understand what is the right tool and what do we have to invest and how do we have to overcome the challenges that we are facing. Now, what they're currently doing is, whoever says this product is good, they're going ahead and installing or implementing multiple tools in their environment. And uncertainty, not competent in nature, the resources who were doing A tool, are forced to do the B tool without understanding, what's the configuration has to be, what's the setup that is required, and end up in a lot of, incident and, threats that we are facing. So the organizations have to definitely take a stance, be it physical security, crisis management, cyber security, or data privacy. They have to understand their security culture, because cybersecurity is an art and it's not a formula which will be zero incident. It's an art, and we'll have to understand what to implement and where is it required and which level of importance needs to be given to the controls that we are enabling, because it differs from organization to organization. Once they understand their own security posture and enable the culture, I believe we would be compliant in nature.
The cyber guys are scaring the physical guy by saying it's an art and science, but it is nothing but the IT, physical security in IT terminology. That's what cyber is all about.
I totally endorse that.
Same thing in IT terminology.
Yes, absolutely.
So nothing to get scared of.
Absolutely. It is not scary. It is made scary just to hold the turf. Sir, we have 2 minutes, and I'll take maybe 30 seconds or maybe 2.5 minutes. So I'll take if you all five of you have been given a crystal ball, and I'll say 2 sentences summarize how does the future look like. I think 2 points. What do you see the future looks like, sir? Chandrawat, sir, start from you, sir.
So understand what technology is coming in the future, what it is now, how it's going to evolve, upgrade yourselves, upskill yourself, have a kind of a vision, as I said, and make sure that your team, which you have around you, you surround yourself with thoroughbreds and not with mules. They will push you through to achieve high standards. Otherwise, you will stay where you are.
Great. Excellent. Gopal, sir.
We need a couple of really center of excellence. We need a couple of Yales and Harvards and organization of center of excellence of that nature, where we groom the young generation as a risk professional who understands physical and cyber security well. Presently, we lack that in this part of the country, I think globally. And second thing, I would always say that understand the language of the business and align with the business goals and business vision. If you remain in silos, you always remain in silos. You never get into the mainstream.
Right. Thank you. Sanjay, sir.
My point on the convergence is that if cyber looks at cyber in isolation and physical looks at physical in isolation, there could be no conversion, and in that case, both will be losers. So it's important that they come together as a team and start operating the function for mutual win-win for organization as well as for themselves.
Great. Sandeep?
2 points. So the first one being that please think of risk holistically. So look at insider risk and external risk. Both cyber and physical risk are external risks. When you look at insider risk, there are a multitude of internal risks, which are including, internal fraud and, corporate crime, etc. As a physical security professional or a cyber security professional.
Two sentences, that's all.
Okay,
one
done. So second one, keep thinking, don't stop, and keep aspiring. So taking cues from Colonel Chandrawat and Sanjay sir and Gopal sir. You stop reading, you stop growing. You stop growing, you stop having visions. And if you don't have the vision, you'll not be able to lead.
Perfect.
And stop.
Kavita?
Yes. So once quote I would like to add here is failing to plan is always planning to fail. So never fail to plan and understand your security culture. And one key takeaway is please don't stop the awareness and the key insights that you got from leaders on this call today. Please spread, and the globally accepted truth is awareness. Please educate, and we have to work together to achieve success and not working in solo modes. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. I think I'll just summarize in 15 seconds.
I'll take 30 seconds of yours, Pawan,
Okay, sir, please.
before you summarize.
Yes, sir.
That Rashtriya Raksha University, in partnership with one of the premium business school, is going to launch a 1-year postgraduate diploma in corporate security management. That is basically 4 months teaching in either XLRI or IIM and 8 months in Rashtriya Raksha University. And I'm sure that this would provide a very good, sort of a young leadership at the cutting edge level who would further grow. And if we all support such initiative, in fact, I am constantly in touch with Colonel Chandrawat and others, that if we support, that project is going to be a very good, talent pool available in this country.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you, Pawan.
Great, sir. I think amazing insights, sir. I think just summarize the words, which is that it's inevitable. It's about culture. It's an art. I like Sandeep 3 U and 5 C's. I think I'll be asking for the details. Understand, upgrade, center of excellence is the way we have to align to business goals. We need more Harvards, IIT, IIMs, and Kellogg's and Stanford's into this industry. We need to think holistically. Insider threat is something we are not looking at very actively. We need to focus on that. Never fail to plan, and awareness is the key. With that, I would really like to thank, I think amazing insights from great leaders. Thanks a lot for joining us. Greem, sorry for taking 5 minutes of your time, of your session, Greem. I think you'll have to bear with us. I think it was amazing. It was very difficult to get this stature of people at the same point of time. Once again, from side of on behalf of Everbridge and MitKat, we thank every one of you. We're happy if you can remain on the call for the rest of the session also. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pawan. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Pawan. Bye.
Right. Thank you, Pawan, and greetings to all the attendees, and another round of applause to the esteemed speakers of the previous panel. Now, moving forward, I am privileged to introduce to you Graham Osborne, who holds the Global Business Development Responsibility, Partner Solutions, and Technology Partnerships for Everbridge. Graham brings over 15 years of experience in communications, cybersecurity, governance, risk, and compliance, and also holds a stellar record of success across multiple industries across the globe. Graham is responsible for Everbridge's APAC region, and he works with multiple organizations to design and build and go-to-market offerings, interfaces with Everbridge's existing client base, prospects, channel partners, as well as new clients, to drive awareness of CEM, or critical event management, and the value that CEM brings to businesses, both in terms of people protection as well as business operations. thereby driving higher growth in terms of value for both customers and shareholders. Graham works very closely with industry groups in various advisory capacities and has an interest in digital transformation, big data, and artificial intelligence. So without any further ado, may I now request Graham to please talk to us about his ideas on digital transformation from resilience. Over to you, Graham.
Thanks, Sandeep. And again, tough act to follow. I think there was a great panel, some great insights coming in. And hopefully, as I walk through the presentation here, you'll see some common themes coming out. And I think there is some commonality in regards to resilience that we're seeing in the marketplace. And I can't share my screen. Could someone allow me to share my screen? Is that possible? Sorry.
Yes, I have given the access. Please.
Thank you very much. I got it now. Thank you. So I guess, what I wanted to go through is really the digital transformation for resilience. And what I mean by that, I think the key for me is there's a lot of elements that we can take from the panel there, but there's also a practical element which comes into organizations, which we see a common theme coming from organizations trying to implement resilience programs. So I guess to start with, just in regards to an agenda, I think, I'm going to cover sort of 5 core things here, which is, there is a challenging outlook ahead. I think there's resilience operating frameworks get thrown around a lot. There's some commonality in what we're seeing from organizations that I'd like to share. Then it's really how do we build the bridge, and then the technology enabling resilience for organizations, and then my closing thoughts. So as I look at, a challenging outlook, I think, there's a core element that's coming from the globe, right? That events that are going to impact us as individuals, as community members, as family members, as businesses, are increasing on an unprecedented scale. I think, we can all see what's going on in the world, but actually what I look at is there's a lot of intertwining between events. And the key aspect behind that is when we're looking at things that are happening to us, our ability within our businesses to respond is going to really determine how successful we will be moving forwards. Now, there is a lot of pressure being put into people on this call now to make sure that organizations can respond, can turn on the lights tomorrow. And when I look at digital transformation, I always like to look back at the beginning of my presentation as to some of the examples of where that's failed, and then some of the areas that we've really come on. So when we look at, looking back, I think the biggest example of an organization failing to adapt to demand was with Blockbuster, right? And I think that's a great example. But, it isn't stopping there. The way that we as customers are now consuming services is changing in such a way and at such a pace that failing to keep up actually is impacting our ability to serve the clients. I was working with a bank recently, and they lost 150,000 clients during a 1.5-hour outage where they were unable to process payments, where people actually went online and opened new accounts, transferred, and actually took that business away from that particular bank. So I think, the way that we're consuming is definitely impacting how our business needs to, one, adapt and consume technology, but also provide the service to the client. And then really when I break that down and I look back, I'm sure all of us on this call remember that wonderful thing called the golden hour. And then it went to the golden 15, and then it was, oops, no, it's happened, it's on social media. I think that same mindset has to be driven into resilience and how we respond to incidents. And it's by no easy feat that we're able to do that. And I do believe that technology can help arm us with the correct information faster to be able to respond to events in a much more considered way, enabling us to then really drive down that time from a response perspective. So as we pause and we look at resilience operating frameworks, there's a commonality coming out from what we're seeing in the marketplace. And I think the key aspect for me is a lot of organizations are now being pulled into resilience in a much more broader term than they ever have done. I think when we look back, COVID was the biggest accelerator of digital transformation for a lot of organizations. And actually usage of digital tool sets has increased exponentially because us as consumers are also consuming more digital capabilities from the marketplace. So when I look at the process that we start seeing, and I think it all comes back to, a great point was made earlier on in regards to understanding what is the risk. The key for me is there's a lot of risk being forced on organizations. I'm in Australia at the moment. We're just hearing this week that they're imposing new $50 million fines for cyber breaches. It's going through the government at the moment. I think, legislation and regulation on a global basis will only increase. Right? And the key aspect behind that is what is the acceptable risk to the organization? And then when you start breaking those steps down is really, well, what is our policies process? What is the organization that we work within? Data and technology serve part of a purpose within resilience. And I think, someone said this at the beginning, technology can't be a silver bullet for this. Absolutely not. It's part of the ecosystem from a resilience perspective. And then ultimately, when we look at the last stage, the response and how we respond to events is ultimately going to impact whether we come out of an event, looking good or looking bad. I think some of the key examples I give, I think one of the biggest ones I remember from a personal perspective was TalkTalk in the UK. The CEO come out and was on a TV screen next to a Windows 95 machine. That's not exactly an ideal response from a cyber perspective, from a cyber attack, to be showing, an outdated Windows machine behind you. So again, I think having well thought out response processes is critical for any organization, because we see the impact not just to the brand, but also things like the stock price being very, very critical at points like that. The other element, which is really key from an organization perspective for me, is how do we finance response? And then ultimately, do we have insurance for that? Or is there a balance sheet amount that we're able to use? Those things are really, really important to have identified as well. So when we start breaking this down, for me, there's always a bit, left of bang and right of bang, as I like to describe it. But from an organization perspective, when I'm working with the organizations, there's definitely a key area where we're looking, right, how can we become more preventive? How can we recognize early warnings to be able to respond to an event before it actually impacts us? And I think when you look at the key aspect behind that is there is some core elements that can be undertaken. One of the biggest examples that I've seen happening is during flooding, organizations actually moving their capacity from a impacted location and setting up that capacity outside of the impact zone, which obviously requires financing and obviously a response team to be able to do that, but it enables them to serve their customers faster. So for me, when I look at the three core processes, the preparedness is definitely key, where we're identifying those policy and processes, able to then identify what we need to do. And then when that bang happens, we're able to respond fast. I worked with an organization recently, just to give an example, the average terror incident is lasting, a sub 8 minutes. So to impact the outcome of that for their employees, they need to be able to communicate to their employees within 2 minutes, realistically, to tell them to get out of harm's way. Are they able to initiate that? Typically with the data sets and the data collation that they have to go and do, it takes them nearly 30 minutes to collate the data of where their employees are. Again, those things become core considerations, and we'll explain how technology will help with that in a moment. So when we look at how we build the bridge, I think, and I call it building the bridge because technology, resilience, and the business have to go together. And I think we've heard about this from the panel, is, we have to create the business case. So for me, attaching resilience into the business ecosystem is of vital importance, because it not only helps us get the buy-in across the business, but people understand more why we're doing this. And I think that cultural element has to be embedded, because people are so used to being able to work in the way that they have worked. Having to change that becomes a cultural element for the organization. We are a resilient organization. We want to be resilient. I think it's really, really critical that message is not just from the top down, but also the bottom up. So I guess when we start breaking things down, events happen every day. And I think, there's huge amounts of different events, whether it be cyber, whether it be physical. inside, outside, it really doesn't matter. Events are happening which impact our organization. And really, when we start breaking down, what tends to start getting in the way, I think that the left-hand point there is a huge amount of data, especially on a global basis now. There is way too much noise, way too much data to be able to allocate, what is going to impact us, and then actually understanding that impact. I think that the two that I would then really focus in on is, this silos that organizations still have. Today we're talking about the convergence of physical and digital, or cyber and physical. For me, we're still seeing a lot of organizations having silos, not just in regards to working from a response perspective, but then also, from a data perspective. And the key aspect that we see then that really slows down the response capability, because people are doing things in an individual track versus an organization track. And for me, that's really, really important. The clear element that comes out of organizations when they're doing that is really a reactive approach versus a proactive approach. And being proactive is where we see organizations best driving down the time to respond to incidents and ultimately respond as a business. So really, when we look at this and we start looking at the processes, and I think, I keep one that I took away from the panel was this thoroughbreds, not mules, right? Really, some of the areas behind that I've seen is when people don't have the right information. People are panicking under pressure, and I think those thoroughbreds actually understand where to go and get the information and what to do. The key for us is how do we enable that faster? When we start breaking down where organizations, is they go into panic mode. A prime example I remember very vividly was we were doing a fire drill evacuation manufacturing plant with a big organization. I'll never forget, the fire drill is the most practiced drill in the world, in my opinion. It's, everyone does a fire drill, and we lined up outside, and I remember it because it was my first week in Singapore, and everyone was lined up outside, and me being me, I was wearing a jacket, and obviously it's very hot, and we got into about 5 minutes and people are all lined up. They're all lined up and people are counting. And I asked a question of the exercise lead, what are we counting again? Of just doing the exercise. They didn't actually stop and think, well, what is actually the impact when we're doing this if we don't have people on the register to be able to count against? In my opinion, what is the point? So, when we look at as a result, I think there's 4 key areas that really stand out. Employees do go at risk. Operations suffer. Customers do lose confidence, and ultimately brand and revenues are at risk. That is a core component of incident response, in my opinion. And then the same height, when we look at, whether it be a cyber incident or a technology incident, that's how people are consuming our services. And when I look at our customers, both internal and external, has already been communicated to, that employee experience, there's nothing worse for me than when my laptop doesn't work properly. Right? And then you look at a customer perspective, it's the same thing. These are having material impacts. These incidents are having material impacts on our business, one way or another, whether it's internal or external. And just from an example perspective, how we start linking things back to businesses, right? And I think, I took this slide because it's, big numbers purposely, but I think, really when we look at the business, every minute or every second can actually be quantifiable as to the impact. So when you look at, for example, 100 milliseconds slower for Amazon, look at the cost impact that that's having. Like just simple statistics behind that, actually start justifying the timing elements that we can make as an improvement when utilizing technology potentially for our resilience programs. So as we move into the transformational steps in technology, and I think, this is really, really important for us is we were speaking about the risk earlier on and identifying the risk. So from our perspective, when we start mapping out those things that we care about and those risk events that could potentially impact us, when we look at it, we do have a huge amount of things that we care about, whether it's our people, buildings, supply chain systems, or reputation, on both internal and external risks. And when they overlap, that's obviously when it becomes an event that we care about. But the problem is, from a people perspective, we don't just have fixed employees anymore. We might have expats, travelers, or visitors, right, have all been mentioned today. So we have to be able to not just identify those individuals, that are in an office, but also the others as well that could potentially be impacted. And then the same on the risk events. Being able to identify those risk events are really, really key. But when we look at risk events, and this has come up multiple times, for me, the big one that can come over the top of this is change in behavior. And it's really interesting when I work with HR teams and people start taking, handing in their notice and things like that, their behaviors change. And for me, that becomes a core monitoring point to look for the insider threat as well. But before that, there's often a change in behavior for an employee as they're building up to handing in the notice. Right? And are people acting abnormally? Those can be really early indicators for behavioral issues that could potentially impact us. So when we start, going on and then we start looking external and internal from a people perspective, whether it's the consumers of our services and our customers or supply chain, the key aspect is all of these risk events overlap. So for me, being able to identify that and being able to then understand the risk that poses to the organization is the number one starting point for me when we look at that. So when we look at those risk events and assets, the key aspect behind that is then the context. And for me, context comes in multiple different ways. The starting point for me is that identification that we've spoken about, but the internal and the internal should be done together. We should be bringing those external and internal alarm points into a single viewpoint to be able to then understand, do they actually impact us in multiple ways? We've seen natural disasters don't just actually, they're an external threat, but they actually impact us internally as well. The same with active assailants, internal and external. Again, for us, those risk elements coming in and being utilized as the starting point is really, really key. And when we start mapping this out, the key for me is we have all of those alert points, and people have spoken about the smart cameras coming into the ecosystem now. They also serve as great contextual elements. When we see an alert, being able to then pull up that camera and actually get that real-time view of what's going on helps us make a more informed decision. Furthermore, beyond that, what we also see is if I go through huge amounts of alerts, right, there's so much information coming in from the organizations. From our perspective, what we start seeing is a much better way of aggregating, deconflicting, deduplicating, and putting in all of that information into what we call an Uber alert to cut through the noise. That gives us a really good starting point, because we actually have so many different types of alerts coming into the organization, whether that be trusted or non-trusted, right? Or even from a phone call or a picture being sent into the operations center. For us, we have to be able to consume that information and actually make sure that it's valid for us to be able to then respond, especially with the rise of fake news. I've seen a lot of organizations, I've spent the last 2 weeks, really working with organizations that used to have, for example, Twitter, and, with the new blue tick, obviously poses an issue for some organizations where they're seeing some fake news being accepted. So from our perspective, getting ahead of that is really, really key. And then the same internally when we're seeing multiple alerts from a cyber incident. Again, how do we map those into that singular incident to stop alert fatigue? And as we're talking about that contextual element, for me, the key is, and someone mentioned this in the chat earlier on, our jobs have just become exponentially harder, right? Because the problem we've got is now, we're used to having 60–70% of our workforce in 6 or 7 or maybe 80 fixed locations, and we've gone now to hundreds, if not thousands, of sites, right? Which poses a whole new risk, because where does duty of care begin and duty of care end? Where does our security posture end internally versus externally? You know, we worked with organizations recently. Someone asked me if I ever updated the firmware on my wireless network point at home. No. Right. And for me, so there's a whole new amount of risk that's coming in. But then beyond that, when I look at, it's not just about identifying the individual, but also the business function they have. Worked with an organization recently who realized that they had 60% of their call center capability in one location. And following that location identification, they then looked at those individuals' home addresses and worked out of that 60% from the call center capacity, 80% of them lived within a 4-grid network of an energy provider. And if those energy grids went down, their capacity to serve their customers reduced 80%. So they actually had to take a process where the office becomes a DR site with people working from home, should they need to bring people into the location to then field that calls to keep the business running. So from our perspective, you know, that identification is really, really key, not just of where the individual is to be able to respond to the incident, but actually to keep our business operational. What roles are they serving within those cogs to make sure that we're actually keeping the wheel turning? And, you know, I think, you know, where technology really helps here, and you know, we're looking at this is there's huge amounts of information we have across the organization. You know, people have mentioned, you know, facial recognition scanning in, visitor systems coming in and out. You know, the key aspect is that's a great location data point that we're able to use should we need to identify where an individual is. For me, that's where technology does start to help and actually give us that situational information, not just from an individual perspective, but that individual's capabilities. The same furthermore beyond that, and we've spoken a little bit about technology, but where does the technology mapping happen? What does that actually mean when we lose a data center? You know, what systems are being impacted and what impact does that then have to our clients? These are all questions that actually impact the severity of our events. So for me, the key aspect is whether it's internal, digital, or even building focused, right? We need to be able to identify what that risk is, right? Because at that point, we can take the corrective action. And really, that's where the response system comes in. When we're armed with the correct information from an impact perspective, a legislative perspective, and we know what we need to do, we can now really start driving response. And I'm just going to show a few examples here. And, you know, the key for me is when we see something happening on a global basis, we're looking at, you know, a protest. I mean, there's a couple of things that we should be able to do in quick time. So we've picked up the alert, we've been able to verify it, but we may now want to initiate multiple processes at the same time. For us, that should be very, very simplistic. We should be able to identify what needs to happen because it's based on a process that's been predefined. And we should be able to then enact that very, very quickly from a single pane view. The key thing for me is, and this is really where we really see value being added by having that policy and process embedded into those areas, is actually those step-by-step tasks that need to be undertaken, being allocated to the correct individuals, whether that's based on location, skill set, or in general, just the policy that is there. We're able to now automate that process to ensure that we're responding in the correct way. So as I break down the technology aspect, you know, being able to consolidate the alerts, it's really, really key. But locating the people and the assets that are impacted, being able to make sense of that, enables us to initiate the correct response every time. And for me, that needs to be predictable and prescriptive within the organization to embed that cultural element in. But the key aspect, and I think someone also mentioned this, is we have to keep learning. We have to be able to close that loop and understand from the data that we receive, you know, and actually use that data in the future to actually be able to consistently and constantly improve our processes is actually one of the core elements behind technology. So as I leave with a closing thought, and I've got 2 slides, I think one is definitely something that I believe very, very much, is how do we enable individuals and people to be able to become more, if you like, a superhero from a resilience perspective. And I think technology can definitely help with that. Technology is not the silver bullet. You cannot replace everything with technology. People are still going to be at the heart of organizational resilience. But with technology, we're able to give them the information to enable them to make the correct decisions and respond faster. For me, that is the key message from a resilient perspective as we grow in resilience. It's really, really key that we're able to do that. And then lastly, if I left with four thoughts, I think for us, one of the key points I've worked with customers on a lot is acknowledging vulnerabilities within the broader ecosystem. Not everything is within our control sometimes. You know, we have to be able to identify those gaps that are outside of our ecosystem. Connecting resilience with other goals of the organization, again, is a core element. It can be coinciding with ESG goals, for example. You know, we've all, you know, asked the questions about funding today. The key for us is whether this is the employee experience, the customer experience, any of those other goals of the organizations, we should be connecting resilience with. And then from an organizational wide perspective, effectively communicating and getting people to understand the resilience program is really key across any organization. And I guess the last thing for me is definitely we have to consider resilience to be a journey and not a destination. I think, you know, the world moves too quickly for us to be able to stand still. So for me, those are my four closing points. And, you know, again, thank you for listening, and happy to answer any questions.
Right. So if there are any questions for Graham, I would request the audience to kindly put them in the Q&A box or the chat box, and Graham can take them on. Or alternatively, we can wait till the end of this session, at the end of which, you know, we will address all questions. And I'm very, very sure that as the session passes, a lot of queries would in any case get answered, because there is a superb lineup of speakers subsequent to Graham also. So if there are no questions now, I would like to thank Graham for his wonderful talk, very, very insightful, and with some very, very eye-opening data and statistics. Thank you so much. So Graham, I have a question. You know, you did speak about workplaces, dynamic work locations, and hybrid work, and the need for monitoring the safety and security of our people there. We have also witnessed a return to large events involving public gatherings, sporting events, holiday, leisure travel, etc., in almost all parts of the world. Sadly, we have also witnessed some, you know, very sad public tragedies, like the recent Indonesian football stadium stampede, the Halloween stampede in Seoul, and shooting incidents, etc. So, Graham, how do you think companies can leverage technologies in these kind of situations to ensure the safety of their people as part of duty of care?
Yeah, sure.
And do you need, and do you think there would, you know, it would make sense for private enterprises to interface with city administrations and government in such cases?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there needs to be a fostering of information sharing, I think, more and more across the industry. So I think that the key element is when we look at the two elements there is I think there's a balance that's happening at stadiums at the moment. You know, being a very, you know, I remember the Manchester bombing incident, and, you know, there is a clear, you know, now law being driven from that, right? There's a lot of discussions around this, around who takes responsibility, the response capacities. You know, we're seeing more and more football clubs now bringing in, you know, even directors of terrorism, for example. So I think that the key aspect is I think the organizations need to take responsibility and to learn. And I think the key aspect is at the moment, we've seen these events happening more and more and more and more and more. And I think the only way that actually people respond is actually when there is, you know, legislation behind this, right? And I think the key aspect is people sort of say it's a best endeavor, and this is a personal opinion, by the way, and I don't want to say anything out of turn, it's just a personal opinion. There's a best endeavor to do the right thing, But until it becomes a legislative approach, I think people will always have, a get out type of approach. The best stadiums in the world that we're seeing at the moment have introduced more and more technology. I think the key aspect is when you're looking at technology, the fan experience and the security element have to come together at some point. And I think that the fear has always been we've all seen it when we come to a stadium, is having to queue for an hour to get in because you're being scanned and searched actually impacts the fan experience negatively. But at the same time, I think there has to be a balance made between that security and experience element. So I think we're seeing some advances in technology now, specifically around some of the scanning capabilities that is able to pick up things a lot faster, more advanced CCTV capabilities, which enables us to actually detect things now like crowd searches, right? So that enables us to respond faster. So I think when we're seeing this activity happen, we're seeing a lot more data points coming in, which enables us to take that corrective approach faster. And that's really where we're seeing that modernization being critical, if you like, within the stadium and any major event response, because there are behavioral patterns that lead up to a major event such as a crushing or a surge, etc. There's some real key elements that you can take from early alerts across the technology that you have available to.
Right. Thank you, Graham. You have already answered the next question that I had in mind, because you did mention during your talk, and it was there on your slide, and you just said it, that we see increasing legislation and regulation. And thank you for bringing out the challenges and the opportunities from the increasing legislation and regulation from various quarters. So going forward, you mentioned that risk events are likely to increase in nature, context, frequency, velocity, and as we now see, including ferocity. And coupled with the increasing responsibility of companies in being risk aware in near real time. You did talk of being predictive as well as prescriptive. So now there are a couple of solutions and all in the market which are in the form of platforms. So if I may ask you, what are the common frailties in such kind of solutions that you have observed, and what kind of solutions are you, talking to companies about to stay ahead in the risk, resilience, and the response curve?
Yeah, sure. I think it's quite interesting. I think that the key for me is the solutions have to fit into the ecosystem, number one. And I see a lot of solutions coming in as point solutions and very much point in time solutions. And I think that is always quite a challenge for an organization, especially from a resilience perspective. I think when you take a step back and you look at organizations having to change, I think, we can't expect an organization, and it's quite interesting. I was working with a company recently that to get a system that they'd procured to monitor their security network, they did have to upgrade all of their IP cameras, right? And that was a cost of 6-7 million in addition to what they'd just spent on the solution. So for me, when I'm looking at the technologies that are really required, we have to look at the ecosystem that we're operating in today. And can this go with us on the journey that we're anticipating? Now, no one's got a crystal ball that says, 5 years out what things are going to look like. But the key element for me is to be able to move with the times and have confidence that vendors can move with us. Are their development teams able to move forwards? For me, one of the core questions I always ask of organizations is when we're working with organizations, well, how big is your development team? Are you going to be able to keep up with the future demand? Right. The other element, when we spoke about data points today, and I think data collation and data processing capabilities are often overlooked from a resilience perspective, right? Because if it's taking us 5, 6, 7 minutes to process that set of data to get an output, it's too late, So for me, those two elements have to go hand in hand, and we have to be able to demonstrate the time element, right? So for me, time is of utmost importance when we're talking about resilience. So when we do testing and we're working with organizations, for me, I balance everything on, well, what is good looking like today? And what does it look like with this solution? For me, I call it a process called digital mirroring, because we should be able to look at, well, what are we doing today? And this is what it looks like in the new state. And then there's a direct correlation between the time aggregation that actions can happen within. That for me is then how we can demonstrate the value of solutions. And that's just a core element I would look across any solution that we're looking for resilience.
Right. That brings me to a very, I think it would be an interesting point. So if, time is so critical and, latency is an issue, and of course, the transitionary nature of technology is the way it is. So what, in your opinion, should be the back-end support that companies need to, have to make sure that this response towards resilience is, fast enough and, valuable to companies and its assets?
Yeah, and again, I take this comment, and I've written this down because I really like it. It's this thoroughbred, not mules approach. And I think, and I'll say a couple of things on that. I think a lot of organizations are really feeling the pressure at the moment, right? And, unfortunately, I've seen this both on the cyber side and then the physical side as well. The IR capacity drops significantly for organizations outside of working hours, which creates a big gap for them. I saw this. I was working with a bank actually in the Caribbean. They actually had a ransomware attack that happened at 9 p.m. and it was ignored for 6.5 hours. That is, unfortunately, a common theme that we see. So for me, the core aspect is when we're building out our security postures, it's great having the alert mechanism, but we also need to have the response capacity on a 24/7 basis. Now, unfortunately, the people that want to do us damage or the events that are happening around the world don't happen just within business hours. So for me, the core aspect is when we start mapping out those processes, we need to have those thoroughbreds, right, available to us 24/7, whether that's an internal and external organization, or actually the specialties that organizations can provide externally when we require them, but fast. So that goes back to my point on the resilience frameworks. When we need to employ or engage with, these IR experts, whether it be a ransomware negotiator, for example, I've seen those being really utilized recently, where they actually know the names of the individuals because they're in a call center and they've actually now done so many conversations with them. They typically know who they're going to speak to. For me, that really seems a critical element, is having the availability of the expertise when we need to respond to particular incidents. I think that's overlooked too much.
Absolutely. Ransomware negotiators available 24/7. That's a very, very interesting point, which I have noted down. And, we will talk about this more, offline. Very interesting. Thank you so much, Grant. I have no more questions at this stage. And once again, thank you so much for your wonderful and insightful talk. And with that, I will now pass on the baton to my colleague, Ranjit Sinha, to take the session forward. And just by the way, there is no criteria of being in MitKat unless you are a Sinha. So I will hand over now to my surname sake. Over to you, Ranjit.
Thank you so much, Sandeep sir. And Graham, it was really very insightful to listen to all the experience, that you brought out here. And thank you so much for that. Great. So moving ahead, we will be looking at a small demonstration of an AI-assisted risk tracker platform that MitKat Advisory has. And this will be undertaken by Shreya Talwar. Shreya is a senior intelligence analyst at MitKat, and she's also the part of our APAC team looking at the risks in those geographical regions. Over to you, Shreya.
Thank you so much, sir. So in the interest of time, I'm going to dive straight in. So just give me a second. I'll share my screen. So is my screen visible?
Yes, it is coming up.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, it is visible.
Okay. A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're having a great time with all the wonderful sessions that are organized. So I'm here to show you a quick demonstration of our risk intelligence platform tracker. And once you log in, this is the home screen that you see. So it is absolutely customized to the requirements of our clients. The green pins with the black dots represent the asset locations that they would like us to monitor, whereas the diamond pins are risk-related events that are tracked and monitored by the analysts and are taking place in that particular area. So the idea of putting these two together on a map is to give you a hyper-localized visual of how far the event is happening from the proximity to the location of the client and how it is impacting you. So if I would hover over these pins, it would give me a fair idea, a small blurb and information about the event that is taking place, as well as it will show me the distance. As you can see, it is showing 122 kilometers from the Pune office that we have. It is a great feature. It allows you to understand the proximity. If I just click on this event over here, this is what a standard event of ours looks like with all the information in its place, recommendation, sources, impact, and description. It also gives you a risk level and a category. In this case, it is critical infrastructure water. Every alert that we share has a special tracking ID attached to it for making it easier to search for information. One of the best features about this is that you can easily download this as a PDF for internal circulation, so there's no hassle. Another feature that I'd like to highlight is the related events. So let's say an event has been happening for a certain period of time. And in this case, if we're taking the example of Myanmar and the military junta extending emergency, so all related events are going to show up here. So you actually don't have to go in multiple places to look for it. Another feature that, as I was mentioning, is the affected entities feature. So if I were to click on this event over here, let's take this for an example. And if I were to increase the impact radius, let's say here, I'll make it 1200 just for example. So it will show me all the employees that are affected by this event. And it will give you space and time to understand the recourse and the action that you would like to take for the same. You can similarly look at the side pane and it will guide you to where the event is actually taking place geographically. We have a host of other features on this portal, which is the event archive. So in looking at, if you would like to look for a specific tracking ID, you can just put it here and it will show the alert to you. Or you can also download the alerts by the month that have happened in form of an Excel sheet for any sort of historical or trend analysis. Another feature that we offer is that of upcoming events. So all the events that are likely to happen in the next coming few days or weeks are all available here and can be easily accessed. Once you click on them, it will also pop up as an alert, making it very easy. You can go back to the calendar by clicking on this button and it will take you to the same area. The next feature that we have is an event calendar. So this is not an ordinary calendar, it's a risk-related calendar, which is prepared by the predictive risk intelligence team very much a year in advance. And it highlights all the important protest anniversary dates or important holidays that are likely to have an impact on security. So again, you can select any country of choice and you can go by the month that you're looking at, and all the dates will be available to you here. Then we have the weekly forecast, which is primarily an aggregation of the previous two tools in the sense that it gives you all the events that are likely to happen during the week. So your Monday or your Friday meetings become very easy and you can access the locations that you're looking at, whether it's India, South Asia, APAC, EMA, or the Americas. The information is extremely readily available. The next feature that we have is the kaleidoscope. So it's a very interesting analytical feature that has been developed by MitKat. And the idea is that there are certain events that the analysts have been tracking and are known to going to have a very definite impact on business operations. So we mark them on a scale of likelihood and the impact that it is going to have, and then provide a recourse of action, whether it's going to require documentation or monitoring, whether you need to work on preventive actions, whether it's going to be a gray rhino event or a black swan event. So not only is it a graphical representation, but you can actually click on the events and look for the forecast of how the event's likely to turn out, what are the latest developments that are taking place, and the interplay shows us factors which may not be directly connected to the event, but is going to have an impact on how the trajectory is going to go. We also provide more information on the impact scale and how we are calculating the risk for more transparency and information. So this makes it easier to look at how we are calculating the risks altogether. Another important feature that we have as part of our travel risk management is providing, standard static information that can be attached to your employees' travel risk brief. And these are basically static information for someone who has probably never visited that place, or, their things have changed. So it gives you what are the latest COVID-19 protocols, which are the closest business hubs, the helpline numbers, recommendations, and all of that. Makes it very, very easy when someone is reaching a new place. Then, of course, we have the Ask a Question, which is that you can reach any of our analysts for help or any query 24/7 by simply putting in your title and details here. And you can submit this to us, and we would have a turnaround time of about 30 minutes for a standard query. Then we move on to the bar menu, and we have all the features over here, the other products. Now I'm going to talk to you about Rhyme. So when I'm looking at Rhyme, Rhyme is our risk intelligence monitoring engine. It is an AI-based platform that has been built completely in-house by MitKat. It is an open source intelligence gathering tool, and it has been built with the intention of reducing manpower and increasing efficiency at command centers. So as you can see, the primary two features that I'd like to talk about, which AI provides here, is the speed that it almost collects thousands of risk-related events in a single platform, and the speed at which it collects it is continuously populating. So this is great for for GSOC teams or any security teams working in command centers who are constantly monitoring events. And you can also easily download all of these events. Suppose you have missed the screen for some time, so you click on Event Archives, and here, let's say you have France, Indonesia, and India. And for the last 1400 minutes, you weren't able to look at the screen. You can simply download over here by clicking on Download. It also has a feature which basically shows that it is able to give it a risk category and also a risk level. So based on the data that it has been collecting and the volume of data that it collects, it's been able to train itself to look for similar risk related events. And so it gives you a primary and a secondary risk level category. It's also possible that an event may be reported across multiple platforms. So it makes it, very cluttery. You would have the same event repeating itself over and over again. But what Rhyme actually does, it has an aggregation tool. So you can actually click over this and you'll see all the news and the sources where the same risk event has been reported. So it actually removes the clutter, makes it look very neat. We also have a feature that it has geofencing capability. So it's able to focus on locations which are of critical importance to clients and provide them tailor-made custom feed rather than, all across the globe that it's been collecting. So it makes it very focused. Another feature over here is the event search. So you can specifically put in countries of your choice that you're looking at. You can either look for the information in these countries across these risk categories altogether. It has the relevancy levels that you can choose from, your start and end date. So in this case, if I were to just simply look for protests in these countries and click search events, it would immediately load up relevant events that we would look at. So just giving it a second here, pardon my internet connection. But yes, the whole idea is that it specifically looks for the keyword. It provides you with a heat map as to where exactly the protests or the activities are the most. It gives you a distribution chart of high risk and medium low risks. You can scroll through the events right over here. It actually even divides the risk category distribution. For example, the focus is more on environment or travel risk, natural disasters. So it gives you a complete analysis of the keyword and the locations that you're looking at. Extremely helpful for any sort of analysis and the areas that you should be focusing on. You can actually even download this list specifically for looking at it a little later. I have already explained the event archive section. Then we have the keyword monitor. So in case you are looking for a specific keyword, let's say protest, again in India, with a comma, with my event dates as 23rd to 27 November. And if I click on search events, then it will again pick on all the verified information. So it has filtration capabilities. So it ensures that there's no fake news. All information is verified and authentic from good sources. And it will showcase those events right on the screen for you to choose from. So again, once again, please excuse my internet speed, but this is how this function is works essentially. Coming to the section over here again, I am now going to move to the threat intelligence platform, which is again an analytical tool to understand what trend of risks are affecting your organization and its assets in different places. So if we look at the organization overall risk rating, it says 1.58 for all the asset locations that have been marked and the events that have been fed around them. So this organization rating is not arbitrary. So we basically mark our risk events from 0 to 5, 0 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. And based on that, the AI crunches the numbers and comes out with an aggregate number. Also, there are risk ratings for all your individual asset locations as well. The best part about this is that it is available on 3 different timelines, which is current events, past week, and also it shows you what the trends were in the past month. So it'll actually give you a very fair idea of how the risks are changing or which risks continue to stay on and which risks are reducing, which allows for overall analysis altogether. Then we come to the COVID-19 dashboard. So this had been an extremely useful tool that had been developed during the pandemic when it was at its peak. There were several issues related to changing regulations, fake news. So this provides information regarding total cases, active cases, total deaths, total recovered, all from verified sources. You can actually even simply download the summary report for your use. Not only are we providing the overall cases in India, we are also looking specifically at metro cities, and you can find all the relevant stats and graphical representation of the same on this site. Again, you can download these reports very easily. This section would allow you to look at all the relevant guidelines that have again been taken from verified sources. We did the same for all the states. So again, you have all the statistics and the guidelines over here present. You can download the state report to see what the statistics and the relevant information is currently. We also have produced several reports related to COVID-19, whether it's the India vaccine tracker, whether it's the statewide lockdown tracker, statewide regulations, mythbusters, summary reports. We also provide global vaccine reports. So all these reports are again very easily available, and if you click on them, it will lead you to the source and help you get the required information that you're looking for. So with this, I come to the end of my demonstration, and I hope it raises some interest and intrigue. And thank you so very much for your time. Back to you, Ranjit.
Thank you so much, Shreya, for this such a detailed and insightful demonstration of the portal. And just to tell everyone, this portal is actually helping many organizations, large and small, to manage and predict their business risks as well as security risks. Right. So coming on to the next part of it, which is the second panel, again, a very important topic that we want to discuss about, which is the command centers. Like I mentioned earlier, the brain and the heart of entire security operations. Now, this will be moderated by Colonel Sushil Pradhan, who is the Executive Director and CEO of MitKat Advisory. He comes with a vast experience of operating worldwide in the field of risk management, both during his army tenure and in the corporate since he's been here. Data center security is something that's very close to his heart, and he's actually been managing many projects across various domains for security of data center. So I welcome Pradhan sir, and sir, over to you for the panel.
Thank you so much, Ranjit, and very good afternoon to all of you. We are running a little late, I know, But nevertheless, I see all my panelists are here and raring to go. So I'm sure it's going to be as exciting and as interesting a discussion as the first panel. So before we move on to actually discussing the issues which are related to the growth and the prospects of command centers, I'd just like to quickly introduce all the panelists to you. I'll request to you all to keep your cameras on, and when I call out your names, please just wave out to the audience. And then once we have introduced everyone, then we'll get on to the question and answer session for the panel. So in no particular sequence, I'm just going to go around. So Raghavendra is a corporate security and business continuity professional with over 25 years of experience in various fields in public and private sector. So he's been in defense production, in high tech, retail and banking, financial services. Currently, he is heading the physical security and enterprise resiliency function for APJ and India regions for VMware. He's based out of Bangalore. He's got experience in leading teams across geographies and implementing out-of-the-box solutions for key projects and operations. The next is Colonel Arun Hariharan. So he's got over 31 years of experience. He was in the Corps of Engineers in the Indian Army for over 22 years. He is currently the National Head of Security, Safety and Nodal Affairs at Bharti Airtel, India's largest telecom operator since Jan 2018. He's also an acclaimed author and poet, being published in print over 15 times so far. Next, we have Suraj Shankpal. I don't think, again, Suraj needs an introduction. He's an accomplished security risk and intelligence professional with over 17 years of experience. He's currently with Wells Fargo as Senior Vice President and Director of Corporate Security for India and Philippines, based out of Bangalore. Prior to Wells Fargo, he was with PwC as part of their forensic services. He's worked with UBS as in their group corporate security services, and he was also the head corporate security for India. And before that, he was with Goldman Sachs with the Office of Global Security. He is also the secretary of the OSAC Mumbai chapter, used to be the secretary of the ACIS Mumbai chapter, and also the past chairman of the for the West region of the Fire and Safety Association of India. So welcome, Suraj. Colonel Srinivas Balusu, Sena Medal Bar. Colonel Srinivas has served in the Indian Army for more than 25 years, and he's currently the Global Head of Physical Security at Infosys. He's won 2 gallantry awards, as I mentioned, for counterinsurgency operations in Jammu and Kashmir and in the northeast parts of India as well. Next, we have Jasbir. So Jasbir Singh Solanki is the CEO of Homeland and Cybersecurity for Mahindra Defense Systems Private Limited. In a career spanning over 18.5 years, Jasbir has held several leading and challenging positions with Indian Navy and Mahindra Group. He is the youngest head of technical department who prepared Indian Navy sail the ship INS Tarangini for the first circumnavigation voyage and sailed aboard it for 7 months. He's a distinguished member of the FICCI Homeland Security Committee and also plays an active role in industry collaboration bodies and government committees on national security domain. The last but not the least, we have Major Ajay Pradeep Nair. Ajay is a veteran and comes with 23 years of experience in the domain of security operations. He's worked in organizations like ICICI Bank, ITC, Corning, ISS, and with startups like Udan and Misho. He's been responsible for setting up security organizations for greenfield manufacturing projects in the earlier part of his career. And he's been responsible recently for setting up the SLP organization for various startups. So as you can see, we have a great lineup of speakers. And the theme for this discussion today is how technologies are helping to evolve command centers and what are the new trends in command centers. So what we'll do is we'll go around with a quick set of questions, and I'll request the panelists to please prepare or please respond in about 3 to 5 minutes so that we have adequate time for the next round of questions, which may come out of your statements or somebody else's statements. As far as the audience is concerned, folks, I'll request you that in case you have any questions for any specific speaker or panelist, please put down your question in the Q&A box and also mention which panelist should answer it. So what happens is that in case we run out of time during the discussion, the panelists will be happy to answer your questions in the chat box, in the Q&A box. So question and answers in the Q&A box, please. So as a background, I hope this is an educated audience, so I don't need to explain to them what exactly is a command center. But primarily being a forum for security professionals, I would like to emphasize on the fact that a security command center or a security control room today in most organizations has evolved much beyond its basic role of controlling the security operations of an organization. And hence we are using the term command center in various organizations and in various parts of the country or the world. These are called by different names. Somebody calls it a operation center, somebody calls it a JOC, a joint operation center, somebody calls it a GSOC or a global security operation center. So basically all these names primarily talk about the same kind of setup, which is basically a dedicated space. And that is also a emerging trend where that space may be today virtual and not real. So a dedicated space with technology providing inputs about external and internal threats to the organization, which is manned or staffed by a group of trained and dedicated people whose job is to monitor these threats and translate them into actionable information for the organization internally as well as externally. So with that as an introduction, I think I'll start with Ajay because he's just been responsible for converting and creating command centers in the last two organizations that he headed, and both of them were startups. So, they were places where there was no existing security infrastructure. So he had to start from scratch and he had to build it up from scratch. So we'll really like to look forward to hear his views on how will command centers continue to bring ROI to their companies, Ajay?
Good afternoon, everybody, and I think it's an honor to be on this panel of esteemed speakers. A very common question, and I think it is something that we generally struggle with, but I think I'll start off with a background. I think the India security landscape has undergone a major change in the last decade and a half. From merely being considered as a function managing, guarding, and gate passes, today security has evolved into partnering and managing risk and business continuity programs at the enterprise level. And I think this is what we heard in the earlier panels also. In the same phase of evolution, I think the concept of command centers also saw a slow but a steady transformation from basic requirement of having control rooms to monitor cameras with minimal investment and train guarding staff as resources, to where we are today, where the concept of integrated command centers catering to both reactive and preventive solutions have been brought into place. Today, we are designing command centers to enable organizations with assets across multiple geographies to gain actionable advanced intelligence in relation to identified risk and threat landscape that the organization operates in. And moreover, as we heard in the panel discussion in the morning, with the convergence between the domains of CSOs and CISOs moving from concept to reality in organizations, we are also looking at command centers responding to cyber threats as an addition. Command center today operates in a multitask theater catering to the full spectrum of protecting assets, people, intellectual property, brand, and also simultaneously providing predictive intelligence to enable timely decision making for enterprise leaders. The ROI is definitely high and it continues to move up the graph. But at the same time, the investment cost is also going up and is a major challenge all of us face when asking our enterprise for an investment. Some measures that worked for me that I would like to share with this group. I think for an effective ROI, I think it is imperative that we pay a lot of attention at the design stage of a command center. Command center is not a generic solution and deliverables differ from industry to industry and the geographical spread of our organizations. Deliverables for a supply chain organization operating across India vis-a-vis a corporate bank operating in multiple geographical locations across the globe will differ drastically. I suggest have your metrics indicating the deliverables expected from the command center ready before getting into the design phase. We talk about a lot of technology solutions that's available in the market. But what we need to remind ourselves is we need to select the technology solutions against our deliverables. We need to demarcate technology that is essential to our deliverables and technology that is against technology that is good to have. There is a difference between need to have and good to have. A small example could be in the last command center that we set up, choosing between the right kind of display for the command center. You can have a HD plus or the state-of-the-art OLED with a 4K or a 8K resolution. You need to understand what is required for the basic functioning of the command center. And I can tell you, I can vouch for this, that between the displays, differentiating between this brought down the cost by around 2.5 crores. That is the impact that it has. So what you choose will bring with it a big variance in the cost, and judicial investment will definitely lead to a higher ROI. Invest in artificial intelligence-based solutions to ensure effective ROI, specifically in supply chain, logistics, manufacturing units with large span of cameras where monitoring plays a crucial part in establishing deterrence and reducing fraud, and will also effectively reduce strain on the resources managing the command center. Some options: stack counting options, facial technology, as we spoke in the panel earlier during the day, barcode enabled solutions for stock taking, identification during packaging and dispatch. One very important point is develop cases where the command center can be of direct assistance to the business. In the recent past, we have used the command center to share packaging footage with the customer service department to resolve customer complaints. That is a direct addition that you do, or value add that you do to the business. And that's where your ROI comes in for the command center. Deploying qualified resources with background in security tech, fraud investigation, and understanding of organizational risk to operate command centers plays a major role in defining how soon you achieve your ROI. This is something that we already spoke on earlier. Gone are the days when you can have a guard trained in manning a command center. India today has strong consulting organizations like MitKat offering cost-effective and sustainable solutions in this area, both in terms of software as well as manpower. Finally, would like to summarize that the command center and their deliverables would continue to evolve in the years to come with drastically changing threat landscape, and hence the ROI derived will be dependent on effective and tailor-made deliverables chosen to mitigate or reduce risk faced by an enterprise, along with judicial use of need-based technology complemented with a qualified and experienced resource pool. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajay. That's really great to hear. And we can relate to those examples, coming out of practical experience, the issues that you must have faced, and the way you gave out how to calculate an ROI, because in most organizations, security continues to remain a cost center. So I guess if you can't make your business profitable, you can definitely help by reducing the cost outlay. So, and your last point will actually lead me to the next question about the technology usage. Arun is a hardcore technology guy. So, his all his career in whatever fields, whether it was in the armed forces or whether it's been in corporate security, he's been looking at security and technology in security. So Arun, there are lots of technologies which are available today in the market, which look very futuristic. Which of these do you think will still be relevant, and which of these will be still used in, let's say, a horizon of about 5 years or 5 to 10 years? I know 10 years is a long way away to predict in today's fast changing technology. But let's say a horizon of about 5 years, what do you think is going to stay relevant or be the mainstay technology in times to come for command centers?
Thank you, Sushil, sir. Thanks. I think Ajay also gave a very insightful, I got a lot to learn from that. I think he's got a lot of practical experience in implementing SOCs in his previous roles. So thanks for that. So, sir, I would like to share a few of my thoughts, which might sound a little radical, but then I have seen this happen in the pandemic. We have seen this happen. We got a lot of learnings from the pandemic. Actually, it is, all of us will agree here that it has changed the way we look at business, whether it is this or anything for that matter. And being in a telecom company, I realized that there is a lot of scope. He spoke about the ROI for a SOC. So when I go with a very fancy looking SOC proposal to my management, they will boot me out because it'll cost a few CRs, a lot of CRs it will cost, money. They'll say, ki, kyun chahiye, kya chahiye, what is going to be. So it actually has to be sold as a business proposition. So that is the first point I want to give out here. And we have been trying to do that. Now coming and technology, like you're saying, 10 years horizon is way too far because the pace at which technology is changing. We're looking at, IoT. We're looking at integrating sensors. So whatever were the sensors we were talking, like when I was in my when I used to be in Welspun, we were doing a smart city project. And so the kind of sensors we're talking, they're actually prehistoric now. In the last 4 or 5 years, they've all gone out. Nobody even talks about them anymore. And many of them are, they cannot even be integrated with the modern systems and things like that. So the technology changes very fast. So what we should look at is that firstly, I'll elaborate on this a little later. So firstly, I'm saying that it should make business sense. That is the first point. Second point is that we should have technology which is scalable and which is updatable. We can keep updating technology because companies cannot spend lots of money on something, which goes out after 2 years. So you have to have that futuristic. Now coming to the third thing now, with all these sensors and data, so many sensors coming in, integration happening, and all that will happen. We talk about integrating and all that. We know that happens. So coming to that, the requirement will be for data, huge amount of data. So you are aware that the 5G is also being rolled out. In fact, we have been the first company in the country to roll out 5G. We already started it. In fact, my phone is already running on 5G in Delhi. So we have already started the 5G. So we essentially have to understand that even broadband and stuff like that, of course, 5G is not a replacement for broadband. When you talk about data, people have that misnomer that 5G will replace broadband. It will not. Broadband will have higher speeds than 5G. But the advantage of 5G, the biggest advantage of 5G is that vis-a-vis your 4G, it will give you 10 times the speed. It will give you 1/10 of the latency. And the main three things we have to understand: 1/10 of the latency and 10 times the number of devices can connect. So it is 10. The basic rule is 10. So it is 10x in 2 cases and 1/10 in 1 case. So that is how we're looking at 5G. So advantage is where it fits in this SOC wala piece. Is that a SOC is connected to a SOC is not just a room or just a thing. I'll talk about that also. So SOC is just not a room. It's not a room. We put some fancy looking big screens and stuff like that. So all that. So we should park it aside for a while. So SOC is actually it's a whole concept. So basically the sensors have to speak. You have sensors somewhere and you have a sensor coming and feeding in. So it's not practically possible to give a broadband connectivity everywhere. It's not possible to give a Wi-Fi everywhere. So that is where this thing comes. So where you had, if you recall, in a 2G phone, the scenario we used to have those VGA kind of photographs, bad quality photograph, no video. Then we came to a 3G, then we came to a 4G. So now with 5G, we'll be able to stream even 4K videos. That is the quality of videos. The photographs you can have, pictures you can have of really high quality. So that people don't realize that this SOC piece, it really enhances the capability. Without the SOC per se doesn't have to be upgraded. It's only the way the sensors are able. The sensor may be able to capture a 4K kind of a video even now, but it's not able to send it because there is no bandwidth. And there is broadband is obviously not available everywhere, and broadband has got problems that fiber gets cut somewhere, something happens, physical issues are there. So if you switch over to a IoT kind of a platform at that stage and you have a 5G transmitting it totally enhances our capability of our SOC. And then the concept of a SOC, which we realized here in Airtel, I can talk about my company. We have probably Asia's biggest NOC, Network Operations Center. It's not a SOC, it's a Network Operations Center, where we have a huge screen in Manesar. It is there. If you come here, I'll be very happy to take you there. There's a huge video wall there. And they say it's the largest in Asia, the video wall. So the operators are sitting there and they can keep seeing that we can track each of our complaints. We can track each of our guys who's, there's a fiber cut somewhere, there's something, so they track it from there. So when the pandemic happened and people could not come and all, we virtualized the whole thing. The whole thing got virtualized. So each SOC operator was sitting out of his laptop and he was operating from home, and that SOC became a virtualized SOC. So the concept of what I would like to come after that, going forward, the future technology, it will be a virtualized SOC. We don't even have to go for such large investments of having a large room and a fancy room and all that. Of course, I realize that is good for selling your brand and good for selling your product. Those big fancy looking SOCs, you go to talk any SOC operator, he doesn't even need that big screen. He does not need that big screen. He needs a small screen and he needs those alerts coming in there, and he knows uska domain itna banta hua hai, uska kaam itna banta hua. He knows what is to be done. So those big screens, I realize, is more of a marketing tool. So it might sound a little controversial. People may disagree. I agree with that, but this is my personal experience. So the future, I probably feel, will be a virtual kind of a SOC where people can operate from anywhere. Even I can have access to it. Anybody can have access to it.
Understood.
So that is what we're talking about. So what I'm talking is the having a virtual kind of a complete environment going forward. And then of course I spoke about IoT sensors. The future is IoT sensors. It is going to be. It is not. We are not talking only about cameras or having analytics in cameras and all. It is about crunching that big data. You're getting a camera ka feed, you're getting some other sensor ka feed, you're getting something else, and your petrol car is going somewhere, you're getting a feed from that also. So everything integrated. You have an artificial intelligence system which will incorporate all that and clear out the clutter and give you only what is required, what is actionable. And even the actionable, the next point, what I'm saying, we can largely automate it. We don't need so many people and so many people to sit and watch that SOC, and the human inefficiencies are ruled out of the system. So it can go straight. It can, even the last reaction ticket being raised, everything being done can be done. And we are actually doing it in for our network operations. We actually do it. We are largely automated it, including the petroller, everything, where the petroller is going, how much of stuff, how many splicing, material got issued, what is the kind of fiber cut, everything it comes out on that. So replicating the same model here, you see that this can be done. It's a very doable kind of a proposition. And this it spans geographies. You don't need to really worry ki mera yahan pe hai, I'm sitting here in India. You can sit here and you can monitor probably the whole of APAC region doing that. And it's completely scalable.
Absolutely.
So, and a lot of other things, one or two things I found that, sorry to say it again, I found my interaction with a lot of system integrators in the country. A lot of people are trying to sell their wares. They're not honest.
Okay.
I need a particular solution. They will come and try and sell me everything they have, and whatever. It happens. It happens. So what I need, that guy first needs to listen to me. If I'm setting up a SOC, I'm setting up some sensor, something, he needs to listen to me and understand what I want. And then you come up with a solution which is meeting my requirement. It's a bespoke kind of a solution. That does not happen.
Come back to you. We'll come back to you on this, because we need to give time to the other panelists.
Yeah. So I'm finished, sir. That's it. Yeah. And last, he brought out, we have to sell this SOC as a service. So we're already in the process of doing it. You have a nice looking thing, you sell it as a service. Let others also enjoy it, and you get some revenue, get some money return on it. That's it, sir. I'd sign off from there.
Thank you. And that's what Ajay also said. And so some very interesting perspectives you brought out from your practical experience, and obviously being at the cutting edge of technology and communication and sensors and things like that. Now, and you also said something very interesting, which I want to ask Jasbir to talk a bit about. When you talked about manpower, the staffing, the people who are going to sit there. One is everyone says, okay, reduce the manpower, cut down the number of people. At the same time, we are saying, let's have lots of technology. So all these guys need to figure out how this technology works, how to make it work. And when we are saying, let's expand the role, make it a business model, go beyond security, go into business enablers, the guys sitting there look more and more to me like supermen or superwomen. So Jasbir, you've been responsible for setting up one of the largest command centers in this country for the UP police. And I'm aware that you've been doing it for many other private organizations as well. What is your opinion on staffing? Where are we going to find these people? What is the model that you would like to suggest for staffing of all these fancy and highly advanced command centers?
Oh, thank you. Thank you, sir, for asking this question. So I'll be expressing my personal views, so please don't take it as an organization view. So just sharing it for the benefit of the community. So let me start with, first part of the question. And before me, the speakers have spoken about it. So command and control, it's required, one thing, and we started working on it from 2010 when nobody was investing in India in command and control. That was one of our customer hired us for, doing a work for almost 200 crore security budget they had to fix up, right? And at that time, what we were looking for a good system integrator, and the point was being brought out that the system integrators are not there who completes the work on quality and do the timely completion of the project. So a lot of challenges in this, and coming to your question that how this the staffing has to be done, it's a balance which needs to be struck between the technology and the manpower. Again, We have experience of working in private sector as well as government sectors. I have not seen, and very honest, to be a very professionally managed command and control yet. Yes, they have reached some benchmark, but not to the standard where everything can be, the output and the KPIs are properly managed. Yes, in last 12 years, a lot of work has been done in the space, and nobody knew command and control center way back in 2010. And now in 2020, even the smart cities have realized, right? In 2015, all cities started putting the command and control center, and during COVID, they realized the importance of it. So in my opinion, I think it is a balance has to be struck between what kind of technologies you use, and then you have to train your manpower. Most of the time it is you're just putting somebody and then giving them, the system integrator provides them the training, and then they learn on their own. And the focus from the customer also doesn't come. Most of the time, I think it is very important for a customer to list down what are my objective, what am I looking from this investment, and how will I measure my performance on it. That's my initial thoughts.
Thanks, Jasbir. I think there again the experience speaks, and we look forward to hearing more from you in case there's a little bit of time. And what you said about there being a lack of trained people, and I take my mind back to the previous panel where somebody said that we need to have centers of excellence which can train these people, and I'm very happy today so many universities and private organizations are taking up the scope of training people for command centers. We in MitKat also run these capsules almost every month for command center operations. So hopefully things will change for the better. And you did mention something that when you set up a command center, you need to evaluate the metrics. What are the performance metrics? How do you judge whether a command center is doing well or not? And that's something which I'd like to take to Raghavendra, because he's again been responsible for setting up and managing command centers in various organizations. So Raghavendra, over your period of experience, what did you feel? How do we set down metrics for evaluation of a good command center versus a bad command center, or a not so good one, to be more balanced?
Yeah, sure. I think thanks, Sushil, first of all, giving me an opportunity to be part of this panel and esteemed panel, and a lot of speakers ahead of me have clearly called out that this has to be business relevant. It has to be a service. So once it is a business relevant and service, metrics automatically pop up, and without metrics, you're not able to measure what services or what quality you're delivering to the business. So I would like to take the example of, so I head the command centers globally for VMware as one of my additional responsibilities. And then, so we, as an organization or a function, deliver the following things to the organization. One is alarm monitoring, badging, new badges, temporary badges, vendor badges, their activation, deactivation, investigations, travel security, customer supports, both on calls and chat, incident monitoring and communication. This is predominantly the external incidents that are happening, and what Shreya showed us some time back. Audits, basically about the contact sheets, the various other alarms, the CCTVs, the access clearance reports, standard and on demand. So these are the kind of services. First of all, you'll have to clearly call out what are the services that you're going to do before coming out with the metrics. So as I explained, these are some of the services that we provide. And in my opinion, the metrics can be divided into two parts. One is for the services provided. And as we were talking about the manpower and the quality of manpower, to see each individual performance metric of each operator. So the metrics are divided into two parts, one on the overall services provided and on the individual operators. For the services provided, what we currently as an organization measure is how many alarms were managed globally, regionally, what are the different types of alarms, what are the SLAs for alarms. So like from an alarm going off, what is the time to acknowledge it? What is the time to respond to it? What is the time to close the alarm? And there are multiple external events like the demo that was shown. There are so many things that are happening externally. One is to understand like what are relevant to us. Like there are many things that are there, which is probably just news, and some are relevant to the organization. So how do you, and how many such events did we monitor which were relevant to the organization? and any actions that are taken on events that we feel would have an impact on the life safety of our staff or our company operations. And then is the number of calls. So basically, people did mention that this is the hub, brain, and heart of the organization. So people, for any emergencies or any requirements, reach out to this either for a service or for an emergency situation. So the number of calls handles, the number of, we also have a chat handle where people can chat with the team or call the team, various avenues. So the number of chats that are handled, the number of investigations that are handled, and how many of them were successful as an outcome based on the investigations. And finally, providing all these services a CSAT score, like what is the people who are using the service, the users, the management, what is the CSAT score is what is being measured. From an operator's level, what is the mean time to triage the events and incidents? So there are multiple incidents that are happening. So how do you triage them and see which are the ones which need immediate attention, which can be looked at later? And then the individual ticket closures, like how each individual, how many tickets are being received, how many are being closed within the given SLA timing, and the mean time taken to resolve and respond to the tickets that are coming our way. So we have a ticketing system where every request is converted into a ticket so that we can measure at the end of the day, like what is the time taken to resolve these tickets, the mean time taken by each operator, and at an overall level as well. And a CSAT level for each operator based on the experience of each of the person who is reaching out to this command center. So what is the CSAT score for each operator? And for the calls, like what is the average call handling time? So if there are multiple number of calls, this will also help us giving input on how many, the staffing is adequate, inadequate, or is there a scope for additional training that is required? And also two key things, like what is the wait time that people are waiting to reach our operators, and also the abandoned calls and chats. So these are the various metrics, both from a service standpoint as well as from an individual operator standpoint. And this is what will ultimately going into the ROI, or at least to say that we are making an impact or we are able to deliver for what we have been set up for. So these are some of the metrics that we do at our organization to measure both the services and the manpower. Sushil.
Thank you so much, Raghavendra. That was in extremely great detail, and it just shows, that this is actually, again, how hands-on management is required for all of this. And going back to what Jasbir said, you need good people, otherwise your command center is just is a place which doesn't give you your requirement. So need to measure individual metrics and organizational metrics. Now, organizational metrics, a lot of us here on this call, on this event, are from an armed forces background. So I'd like to relate this to, armed forces environment, where people say that, okay, if you are in a counterinsurgency scenario and as a commander, you are responsible for a particular area of responsibility. Are you successful if there are no incidents in your area of responsibility, or are you successful if there were lots of incidents which you managed to tackle successfully? So that question, after so many years in counterinsurgency, even I could never answer it, and I have not yet found an answer to that. So I think command center works pretty much the same way for a business, that if you are able to manage a lot of incidents successfully, are you successful, or are you so good that you are not able to have any incidents coming up at all? So these are the things which we have to face during our operations. But one of the issues which Ajay also mentioned is that, how do you take command center operations beyond security and take it to a more enterprise or a business level of involvement? And that's something which Suraj has been harping upon for so many years, that he's been in the corporate sector when he's been responsible for or managing command centers, that a command center must embrace the concept of duty of care very strongly. And this is something which I'd like to ask Suraj to expound upon. How can be a command center more robust delivery model for duty of care for an organization?
Thank you, sir. I think one comment I would like to make, on the back of the comment that you made. In security, no news is good news. The only thing that as security professionals we have to think about is there something below the radar? And if there is none, then we can really have a good time, like I'm at an offsite. So on in terms of the duty of care, let's look at, people call it GSOC or ESOC or whatever it is called.
let's look at what are the capabilities of GSOC that are readily available to us. Okay, we have well-trained and qualified team members managing these ESOC. So they are, if we compare it with our whatever security officers or the SOC officers or people who normally operate from core security functions, probably they have elevated themselves from a guard to a assistant to a supervisor, etc. Now these guys are smart guys. They are well trained. They have very good communication skills, and most importantly, these guys operate at a global level, if not a India or a regional level. These guys understand, the nuances of every city, every state, every country. They understand the culture. They understand, how people interact in these locations. Very importantly, as they have global or regional or international or national kind of coverage, they are always in touch with multiple teams. So they already have ready access to the teams. They know the numbers, who to call to. They already know who these individuals are on ground, who is supportive, who's not supportive, who will pick up his call late in the night, etc., etc. So we have those capabilities in place. I personally feel, ESOC or command centers, whatever we call it, it's a customer support center. We got to, like somebody mentioned in the start, it's a service that has been provided. The less we should make it as good as like a service center or a customer center, make it user friendly. Now let's look at what we have in terms of the opportunity. So one thing that we all do is every employee, his iCard will have a command center number or a ESOC number. The lanyards will have these numbers printed. We will also have people during the induction telling people that speed dial pay is you got to save it. We will also ensure that we send like a half yearly emails saying that this is the number, please save it. In case there is an emergency, you call this number, etc., etc. We do posters, banners, screens, and it's like if you're a security professional and if you don't know what MitKat is, or you don't know what Everbridge is, and on a lighter note, if you don't know who I am, then there is a problem. So we actually socialize command centers. Everybody knows these numbers. Okay, now we have a capability, we have an opportunity. Now let's look at duty of care, and I'm not going to go into the definitions and all. I don't believe in that. What is duty of care? Duty of care is if you as an individual and if your family, say for example, if you are married, your wife or your kid, your parents, you know your friends, if they seek out to you for help, what all help will you give them? Simple. Now this is duty of care. But when it comes to organization, I think we should expect that the organization will protect us, but obviously not go, beyond that. So my clear concept of duty of care is we don't need legislation, we don't need laws, we don't need regulations. It's simple. It's our employee. He's a human capital. He works for my company, and as a company which has capabilities, we will provide them with support whenever they need. We are not going to look at, okay, whether you are on duty, off duty, whether you're on vacation, whether you're in India or whether you're in Philippines or whether you're in any other country. For me, he is an employee, and I will try my level best to support him during a crisis or an emergency, whether it is personal, professional, etc., etc. So duty of care is very clear, and companies that really get this right, they will be able to deliver. Okay, now we have a team which is 24/7, and unfortunately Murphy's law, all the duty of care events, all emergencies, all personal events, everything happens midnight, over weekends, long weekends, Diwali and Christmas and all that. Okay, it's given. All these times I am more focused on what's happening in the office. So, and then that's how it is, right? So we have these capabilities. Now people should be very freely able to call these numbers at any given point of time, and these guys should kind of react. Now let's look at where the problem comes in. And again, this is my personal opinion. A lot of us as security professionals, we say, oh, duty of care, oh, this is a responsibility of the manager, it's a responsibility of the HR, it's the responsibility of a leadership. What do we do? But we also have to understand we are part of the same organization. These are our employees. As in, we just can't say that we want a high table and we want a CR plus package, but don't do these basic things. And during night, it's difficult, an employee, if in case, and I'll give some examples in the later part of my talk, is he does not have the number of the benefits, he does not have the number of the insurance agent, he does not have the number of the nearest hospital, but a GSOC has everything handy. They are used to, looking at these numbers, calling them, and I'll talk about the connectivity program as well. Now, for an employee, any problem, he should have the confidence to give a call to the GSOC. Okay. And organization should empower the ESOC to take those calls, to react to these calls, activate the right stakeholders. Now let's look at examples like medical emergency. Okay, an employee is going to their homes via in-house cabs or personal cabs, meets with an accident. He or she should be comfortable reaching out to the ESOC saying that this has happened, and then the ESOC activates everyone, benefits, HR, calls up the manager. And the ESOC is so smart because these are well-trained people. They can ring up the parents or their husbands or wife and very subtly tell them that, what, we got a call, so and so person has been met with an accident. He or she has been, we've responded to it, we are taking her or him to the hospital. We will request you if you can come quickly. We reach out to our insurance agent, we get that sorted. Now we become like a one point, in terms of communication, and we get everybody activated. Now that's a very good position to be in. It doesn't take a lot, we already have the capabilities, it's just that we need the will. The other piece, let's look at, say, other scenarios. Say, for example, we'll not talk about COVID, but let's look at a flooding incident. The employee should be able to give a call quickly saying that, what, we got a problem at our hand. There is some whatever flooding in my building complex. My ground floor has gone. I'm on the first floor. I might need some support. And straight away, we reach out to the emergency authorities. If there is in-house capabilities, we send, etc., etc. Now it is easy for the ESOC to be in the center of it and manage it. Now let's look at another examples like serious emergencies like your Chennai floods or Nepal earthquake, etc., etc. An employee does not have to reach out to 10 people. He just calls up the ESOC. ESOC responds. He activates everyone. He or she activates everyone, and we are able to do this in a fashion where an employee going through such stressful situation is at ease. He's like, okay, I've called them. Things will be done. You know, for me, even if employee calls me up saying that, my AC is not working, I'm okay. I'll respond to it. But I will never say, no, it's not my job. You call X number or Y number. So we have to be in the center of it. And if we are on the center of it, all these employees that we will support, they will know us, they will talk about our brand. They will be our eyes and ears. They will be somebody who will be talking about, what security did. Like, I'll give you two examples. I know I'm running out of time. So we had like a senior manager meeting an accident. He called up the ESOC. ESOC quickly got people activated. And ESOC guys are smart. They will not send, the gungs to address, right? So they got the right guys on the shift. They also activated people who we know has police contacts, who stay in that locality, who know the road, and both the teams reach the site. We ensure that the family is taken care of. There is a backup vehicle. They take them home. This guys now track the vehicle. We track the vehicle. We track the employee. The guy calls up saying that, what, we are here. We need police. ESOC calls up the police. Police goes there, picks up this guy, takes to the hospital. FIR is filed. Now this leader, he's going to be in your pocket throughout the life, right? As in, and I still remember in every town halls, he used to come and shake hands. Now we got to have these kinds of experiences, and I do talk about, security should be a good experience for everyone, and ESOC as part of duty of care is a wonderful example. And if we are not doing it, we must do it. If we don't have ESOC, let the SOC do it, but get the right people who can manage that stress, because within a crisis there is crisis. Why didn't you inform me? Why didn't you give me a call, etc., etc.? So we got to have really good guys doing this.
Thank you.
And I think finally I can talk about one more point is, uh, we should not wait for any directions or orders or regulations or law. as security personnel, we should only say yes to somebody calling us. I think that should be the bottom line for the team. The authority to say no should be with the CSO. Everybody should only say yes, and we should put all efforts to resolve that problem. And that's how we will run security as a business. People will, appreciate the contribution that we put, and suddenly we'll become on the high table. We'll be the talk of the town.
Thank you.
And that's about it.
Thank you,
Thank
Suraj.
you, Sushi sir.
Thank you. Great perspective about how we can be more to our organizations than just security professionals. And with that, I'll come to our last panelist, Kan Srinivas. So, Kan Srinivas, sir, you are part of an organization which is a technology organization. We've heard so many perspectives, whether we need good people, we need cutting edge technology. What, in your opinion, is the future of these command centers? Where do you see command centers going from now, and what are the key attributes of a great future command center?
Good afternoon, Sushil sir. Thank you very much. I think it's a opportunity for me to firstly to learn a lot of things from the speakers, what they have spoken about. I consider myself very young into the corporate world. I've just put in about 3.5 years plus, but I was fortunate enough to join the organization, company like Infosys, with a large entity of not only from the technology point of view. I would also say that when we look at the real estate, what we have in India, I think we are in the top 5 real estate company. We can say that, that's the kind of real estate what we protect in addition to the operations from the IT industry perspective.
Right.
Coming to the key attributes, now I think if you take the first 5 questions, each command center should give the best of the ROI to the business entity or the organization, wherever it is being there. That should be the one of the key point. Of course, they should look into the emerging technology. There's no doubt about that. Third is about the staffing part of it, rightly covered, that it is not about putting the machine, it is about having the right quality of staff to get this thing. And of matrix, robust operations things. All these things generally form up the entire thing about how a command center should be. But I would like to bring my experience of last 3.5 years, more specific to how we handle the operations in Infosys, and what I thought I would share about certain things. Maybe they are my personal views. There's nothing to do with the organizational alignment to that. But now when I see, someone talked about that now there's no requirement of having a big command centers where we have big screens of operators operating from thing. This can be operated from virtual. This thing somebody talked about that it's not about having the command center. It is more of a operational centers. Now we should understand, what do you understand by command center? Now, command center simply defines, there is a difference between an operational center where we can define it to a basic operations depending on the kind of operations what we are choosing into. When it comes to command center, all I can sum it up is that it is about the center which can give us the inputs to make decision making much more easier. That is where I put it across into the making any kind of command center. Now, the size of the command center, what needs to be there in the command center can differ by the kind of industry what you're operating in, by the kind of I say the size of the organization, what you're this thing, that can differ into various things because various this thing. So my experience of Infosys, I will say about that. When I joined in 2019, fortunate, why I say I was fortunate is that 2020 pandemic, it actually created work from home was never a kind of an consideration for the IT employees. At least there are a lot of things that no, we cannot go into this thing. The very minimal percentage of people are getting this thing. So suddenly we saw pandemic pushing us into the work from home culture, but we had the entire core operations being delivered from the operations center which were existing in the campus locations of Infosys. Now, starting from the day one of the pandemic till date, we have been operational 24/7. We kept all our campuses live and operational even during the thick of pandemic. We have evolved into different things, but that gave us a lot of learnings about that. How the command center or the security operations center, what we had, can actually create a kind of intelligence which can proactively prevent the incidents converting into accidents. Now, when I say, when we look at the security perspective, incidents are prone to happen. they will continue to happen because things keep changing, people keep evolving, technologies keep evolving, and the requirements keep evolving. Based on that, the incidents continue to happen, but a resilient organization is the one which can prevent the incident converting into accident. Now, that is where the role of the command center comes to play, where I feel in my this thing. So what we did about that, how can we put our operational center into more robust things? So what we started this thing, we started defining certain processes in terms of based on certain data analytics which are available. Based on the data analysis, create a kind of a small intelligence. Based on the intelligence, convert that into a proactive operational process on ground below, which finally was leading into preventing the incident converting into the accident part of it. That is about protecting the environment. As I said, it is about which kind of industry, what we are, and what kind of process we need to get into this. That depends based on the operations what we conduct into. Second thing, from the decision making point of it, it gave me an opportunity whenever there was a kind of a requirement from the, so when the in the middle of the pandemic, when the first lockdown went off, suddenly the IT industry said we should get back the employees. Then suddenly we used to say that, okay, when we are getting back to the employees, my deployment on the ground across India locations, I'm talking about, it had gone to about 20% of the physical security actually there. People, because they were not getting this thing, so the people, the security subcon force had left the organization. So we were in terms of when we're requiring the manpower to reopen the campuses. So one day the CEO, I was reporting to the CEO, he actually made a statement, say that I think, Colonel, it is senseless to increase the manpower when you are not getting even 1% of the employees getting back to this thing. So in fact, I didn't take it in the right this thing that somebody talking, putting a kind of a word which is not in this thing. So because I feel domain experts should be given the opportunity to decide upon whatever they think. Based on whatever they think, of course, we need to take into the decision of the management per se, and then prepare our plans accordingly. I just said I'll take 5 minutes from the CEO. I told him, I said I would want 5 minutes. I just took 3 slides to him, and in the third slide, he just said, Colonel, I'm very sorry. I think I inherited this department. You are the domain expert. I would agree upon. Please continue this thing. So what I brought in there, that see, it's not about the employees getting back, employees presenting the thing which define my operations. My operations define on the criticality in terms of the what is it that I'm protecting, what is it that I need to ensure that I need to bring in that confidence into the employees to get back to my campuses. That is where I put in. When the employees were present, we had eyes and ears through them giving us the advanced information or intelligence in terms of preventing incidents. But when the campus is down with the number of employees, it is porous. We have campuses, most of our locations in India, the acreage is between anywhere between 50 to 450 acres open campuses, where the buildings are numbered from 20 to 50. So that's a kind of a thing. So when I brought in the data available through the command centers, our managers worked out a lot of things. We put it into a kind of a data which can create an opportunity, or which can create an intelligence to make the decision making more easier. So when I took those things through the thing, it took me just about 3 of this. So that is where I come back. Command centers are the ones which should give us adequate dashboards to create an intelligence, and that intelligence to give us a kind of an opportunity to make our decision making more easier, whether in terms of having the operations from the technology point of view, or dependency on the physical security. One more point I would like to say, whether whatever technology we get into the system from our, I'm only talking from the security perspective, we cannot take out the intervention of the human intervention, what I say, because it has to be a kind of a balanced approach. Yes, some places it is just not by deploying a guard that we can mitigate the risk part of it, but you can put a second tier onto it, having an effective data enabled command center which can kind of a create proactive intelligence to make our decision making more easier. I think that would actually bring in a lot of things. I would not dwell upon, because I prepared about how do you go about training the man behind these things. All this has been already spoken by the speaker. So that is where I say we should have a clear cut. I'm just saying my personal view. There should be a clear cut difference between operational centers and command centers. If it is command center, it should be, it could be virtual, it could be this thing. It is based on the organizational requirement, what we can. That's what I think I can sum it up.
Oh, that's a great perspective, and thank you. And definitely, I would like to see those 3 slides someday, which turned the tide around for you in terms of
to give you, Sushil, during the pandemic, the CFO has agreed to give us about 44 crores worth to get technology into my security department.
Then I'm definitely coming.
During the pandemic, yeah, during the pandemic. So that sums up the thing. I'll surely share these slides with you.
So there are lots of questions in the Q&A. Unfortunately, we started a bit late and then we did overshoot because a lot of people gave such relevant points that I didn't have the heart to interrupt anyone and cut them short. But what I'll request the audience to do is, you have already very nicely earmarked certain questions for certain individuals. May I request you to reach out to those people on LinkedIn, and I'm sure they will connect with you and you can take those questions to them directly and they will be happy to answer. Because after this call is shut, we'll not be able to look at the Q&A box again. So please keep your questions and take them to the panelists directly. I do not want to go around another round of questions because we may not have that kind of time available. But what I can do is I'll go a quick round robin, and everyone, if you can please give us your one-line quote that what do you see as the next level, or what do you see in your perspective as the future of the command center? So just one line and that's it. So we'll go around the same way that we started. So Ajay, over to you.
I think so. In one line, I think it is cybersecurity getting into the command center.
Thank you. That's great. Arun, what is your perspective?
Sir, one line is using practical technology and going remote. It'll bring down the capex drastically. Using technology to bring down the capex and make it more.
Technology. Okay, great. Jasbir, what do you feel? Sorry, you're on mute, Jasbir. You'll just have to unmute yourself.
Sure, thank you. I'll take 2-3 lines actually. So I forgot to tell all the people that we are managing almost 140 odd plus police control room in this country. More than 1 lakh people are managed through this, and a population of almost 38 crore, which is more than US population, is being handled. Their citizen-centric, emergencies are handled by our team along with the police department. So our learning from there in the future is that I think, especially in emergency control room, if you talk about, a lot of technology needs to be done and reduction in manpower has to happen. And they will be a fusion center. So, including your both physical security and digital security will be part of it.
That's nice. I was waiting to hear this word fusion center, and sure enough, Jasbir brought it up. Better late than not than never. And, Raghavendra, your one-liner summary.
I think we need to become more meaningful to the people that we serve, both the organization and the employees. I think the more and more value addition that you provide at the end of the day is going to make or break the command centers.
Absolutely. And Suraj, your perspective?
Sure. So I think I'll add on to what Jasbir and Raghavendra kind of alluded. I think what we want to do is we are getting one part of the GSOC right, but in terms of response, there is still a lot that we need to do. We can't have people everywhere. But what I was trying to say is we got to have a connectivity program. So if you don't have a base office in X city, but you should have somebody who you can connect with. And if that can recurring happen, say for example, and I'll just take one more line, is the Chennai flood that happened a couple of years back. All the hotels were full. One of our travelers, after 4 or 5 hours, he realized that there is a command center he can call into. He called up. He said, I don't know where to go, etc., etc. We said, hit this hotel, and he went there. He came back again saying that there is no space. They are throwing me out. So given that we connect with this hotel on a monthly basis and we connect with who the relevant guy is, given that probably the landline wasn't working, mobiles were not working, but we had other means of reaching out to that individual, he opened up a small room within his control room, and he makes space for this individual. Now, that only will happen when you are in touch with individuals. You can just pick up the phone and say, I have a problem. I need your help.
So that
You
is
you
actually
can't,
taking duty of care to its
to the next level.
Actionable level. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah,
Kanl Srinivas, your one-liner to summarize.
Yeah, I'll just say empower the brain with emerging technology.
Great. So I think in conclusion, what we can sort of gather from the various reviews that have come in, we do need technology. We do need people. We can do with reduced number of people, but we need to have better trained people to handle the technology and to handle the situations and to deliver that kind of ROI model that we are looking at to make the command centers relevant to the organizations. And at the same time, we need to evaluate whether will this model continue in physical format with the huge screens and technology? Will we move to virtual models? How best can we make it work? These are all good thoughts which have been put into our minds by all these eminent speakers who've got so many years of experience behind them, working, managing, and the examples were excellent where people talked about how they face these situations hands-on, and that's the huge value that this kind of panel brings to all of us. So thank you. Give a big hand of applause to all the panelists for their wonderful comments and their wonderful examples. And with that, I'll close the panel, and Ranjit, over to you with the delay of a fair amount of time. But I really think it was great, and I'm sure
it was pretty interesting. I think it was immense learning, and thank you and to all the panelists. I think it was really, the points which you brought out were very pertinent, and we'll all carry it back home with a lot of appreciation in mind. So thank you so much once again. And now quickly, to close the proceedings for today, I would like to invite Robin. He's the Account Director, India with Everbridge, having over 13 years of experience and is responsible for growing the business across India. So Robin, over to you for your closing address, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, I'm about to do a magic. And the magic is I'm going to condense 150 minutes of knowledge into just 3 minutes for you. All right. So at the outset, thank you so much. And I would like to share just 3 points. The first is the following. The World War I necessitated the need for bunkers to deal with the offense of the foot soldiers. World War II necessitated the need for radars to manage the offense from the Russian fighters. Now we are in a situation where the world is dealing with how to deal with these drones, which are unmanned, but very well capable to deliver pinpoint attacks. So evolution will happen, come what, but at what cost? So what I've learned today is evolution certainly will happen, but at what cost? Would you rather wait for it to come, or you will go out there? So the leaders are the ones, the successful leaders are the one who will go out and make that evolution happen. And they are the one who would have a position in the executive board. They are the one who will change their departments from a cost center to the value center. Well, I would like to thank the thoughts that were shared by all the panelists. We started off with 340 members in this particular session. It started off with Ranjit, who beautifully compared the full session. A good welcome note from Mr. Pawan Desai, managing the elite list of panelists and extracting knowledge from there. Followed on with Graham, thanking Graham for his thoughts on how the solution at Everbridge is able to be with you before the event, during the event, and after the event. Followed by a wonderful session by Shreya Talwar. Thank you so much for walking us through the technology that MitKat has to deliver in terms of risk advisory. Thanking Sandeep for coordinating the discussion with Graham, followed by Mr. Sushil Pradhan for coordinating the second set of panelists and extracting juice and knowledge out of there and making it available to all of us. Lastly, but certainly not the least, Colonel Samendra for holistically managing this in the back end and making this available. Thanking Kunal Solanki, thanking my colleagues from Everbridge, Rupit and Samriddhi, and all the other back-end team who are not visible right in front of us for making this happen today. We are incredibly grateful to you for your time and availability. Thank you so much, and I wish you a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.